communications at events?
On our radio nets, we do, sir.
Are those memorialized? Are those saved?
The radio traffic from Butler, we did not have recordings.
Do you normally?
Not on the road outside of DC or outside of a presidential or vice presidential stop.
So communications between Secret Service agents will not be available like we've gotten the communications from local law enforcement.
I'm sorry, Senator.
So we're not going to be able to get those communications. You didn't save them.
No, sir.
Which is very unfortunate.
Very unfortunate.
It is, sir. And moving forward, I've directed that we will now start recording those so that we will have them moving forward.
Does the Secret Service use encrypted communications at events?
Let me just put this. Let me.
On our radio nets, we do, sir.
Are those memorialized? Are those saved?
Do you use encrypted? The answer is yes. Are they saved? No.
The radio traffic from Butler, we did not have recordings.
Do you understand, by the way, it's very, very curious. He didn't say, he said we don't have recordings. He didn't say there weren't communications. But listen to the question.
Those saved.
The radio nets, we do, sir.
Are those memorialized? Are those saved?
The answer to the question is sometimes we save them, and this time we didn't. But I got to find a very creative reason as to why we didn't memorialize, save the communications of Secret Service on the day of Butler. And he'll explain why. Here, listen to his explanation.
The radio traffic from Butler, we did not have recordings.
Do you normally?
Do you
not on the road outside of
The answer is yes, but not on the road outside of
DC or outside of a presidential or vice presidential.
We do it for the president and vice president, just not
so. Communications between Secret Service agents will not be available like we've gotten the communications from local law enforcement.
I'm sorry, Senator.
So we're not, I'm sorry. I'm just choking on my own bullshit here.
Going to be able to get those communications. You didn't save them.
No, sir.
No, sir. Didn't. But don't worry. I'm proactive, sir, Congressman. I'm way ahead of you. We're going to save them in the future. You know, when it's kind of important, you know, like when we're protecting a former president, leading presidential candidate. I don't believe that they didn't have it. That's just my personal belief, but I've got no evidence to back that up. But I'm proactive, Congressman. We've learned our lesson. We're going to record. Because it's not like we don't live in the digital age where everything is recorded, whether you like it or not. Where's my phone? Actually, where is my phone? Here. It's not like the NSA is not just recording everything. Oh, no, but this we didn't. Okay, here. But here, listen.
It's very unfortunate.
It is, sir. And moving forward.
Unfortunate is not the right word. Convenient is the very right word.
I've directed that we will now start recording those so that we will have them.
I'm sorry. So you weren't doing it before? You're fired. Oh, it wasn't protocol? You're fired. Holy sweet merciful hell. Before I get too far into the rage, we're not going to let this just fade into the distance. What has been now? It's been 3 weeks and a day. Mainstream media doesn't want to talk about the Trump assassination. I'm talking about it not every day, but pretty much every day. Let me just make sure that we are live across all of the interwebs. Going to go to vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Once bitten, twice shy. It looks like we are working. We're good. We're working there. Let me go to Rumble. Rumble looks like we are good. Holy hell is right. Second CH. And then on YouTube, I know that we're live. But what I'm going to do as we do this is put the link to the Rumble page in the pinned comment on the chat. So before I get too far into the Viva intro rant, link to Rumble. They understand that. We are never going to know what was said or what was not said among Secret Service on the day of Butler. Bear in mind also, this is the same dude who, from what I was understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I'm wrong, this is the same individual that was involved in deleting the text messages from January 6th because they decided to do a migration of cell phones. So they just deleted all of the text messages from Capitol Police or whichever police on January 6th. Did someone say unforgivable? Yes. Humble Half Acre says it's all unforgivable. It's not unforgivable. I mean, it's unforgivable. It's culpable. It's culpable. I don't know what anybody needs to hear more than what they've already heard in order to come to the conclusion that who was talking about the term deliberate incompetence? I'm going senile. I think it was Tim Pool. Deliberate incompetence. No, it's not deliberate incompetence. It's just incompetence. No, it's not deliberate incompetence. I think Tim said it this way. It's just deliberate. Oh, and we have no No evidence now. We can't hear what they said and what they didn't say. We can't hear these, idiots fumbling around. There's somebody on the roof now. 30 minutes, by the way. 30 minutes they lost the threat, and they still let Trump come on the stage. The media is ignoring it outright. And I will not forgive, I will not forget, and I will not move on, because this should be front page news, 24/7 coverage in any other realm of the universe. Freaking Joe Biden dropping out makes the front page news, and I think it was the perfect distraction from the failed assassination attempt on Donald Trump. Are we looking at this? I pulled it up here. Listen to this. This is another one. I think these were from the original hearing on Tuesday, and I think I just missed these clips because I thought was listening to a new live stream on Friday, and I heard these clips. And I'm like, holy crap! I know I didn't hear these on Tuesday, because if I did, I would have had the exact same reaction. Listen to this, by the way, and listen to it carefully. I'm not going to interrupt it. I am going to persuade you into listen to what he says. Sometimes when someone says, you better lay off, like in Pulp Fiction, let me just take this out for 1 second. In Pulp Fiction, when Vincent shot the guy in the head in the back of the car, and Jules is like, no, sorry, it was the other way around. And Jules is berating Vincent. And then Vince says, I'm in the red, and you better back off, because when you put me in the red, I might do something. There's the flip side to that. Like when someone says, you better stop yelling at me, because I'm talking about the Secret Service now, we're still working Secret Service. If anybody listened to this, not only has no one been arrested yet, no one's been fired yet, and they're still on jobs, and they're still on investigations, and they're still on security detail. So this dude right now, and I'll bring it up, is basically, in my humble view, saying, you better go easy on us, and I've got to go easy on them, because they're still working. And if I go too hard on them, they might let another thing happen. Listen to this, and I'm not talking for the next 32 seconds.
I just want to reiterate that our Pittsburgh field office staff, they are wearing this harder than anybody right now in the Secret Service. Right. They feel completely demoralized. And what I'm trying to do is also let them know that, listen, they need to be focused on the mission at hand. I also have to walk a tightrope here and make sure that I am not tainting any future from discipline action. I just want to.
I need to walk a tightrope here to make sure that I'm not, that I don't piss him off too much. Because if I piss him off too much, people might stop doing their jobs even more than they haven't been doing their jobs already. That is a veiled threat, period. And I'm going to play it again, just I'm going to pause it where I wanted to say something.
Reiterate that our Pittsburgh field office staff, they are wearing this harder than anybody right now in the Secret Service.
I'm glad he qualified it. Harder than anyone now in the Secret Service, because they sure as hell aren't the ones wearing it the hardest right now. I'm fairly certain Corey Comparator's family is, and Copenhagen, and the other two Americans grievously. I'm pretty sure their families are wearing this harder than your poor itty-bitty, incompetent, corrupt, malicious Secret Service agents who let this happen under their watch. I'm pretty sure. But thank you for clarifying. They're wearing it the hardest among the Secret Service community. Good. Like anyone can. Hey, dumbass, morale should be low, because you all didn't just fail at your jobs. You were corruptly negligent at your jobs. One person's dead, 2 grievously injured, and but for the grace of God, a slight tilt of the head, we would have been in World War III right now.
They feel completely demoralized.
They should. When you suck at your job, you should feel demoralized. When you are bad at what you get paid to do, you should quit out of dignity. And when you fail at what you were hired to do, you should be demoralized. Just imagine, like, I'm a lawyer and I screw up on a document out of pure negligence. Don't go hard on me, client. I'm demoralized. You should be. People are dead because of it.
And what I'm trying to do is also let them know that, listen, they need to be focused on the mission at hand.
They need to be fired, because quite clearly they are incapable of doing the mission at hand, which is a no-fail mission. And not a no-fail mission, somebody skydived in without a net, bro, and crazy. No, you didn't do step 1. And I don't believe it was an oversight.
Rope here and make sure that I am not tainting any future.
I don't want to go too hard on them.
That I am not
Well, I
Obtain-
understand.
They need to be focused on the mission at hand. I also have to walk a tightrope here and make sure
I have to walk a tightrope because if I ride him too hard, accidents happen. And then, excuse me, in the realm of not only not forgetting, you've got your violent event deniers. You've got people on Twitter basically denying that this happened on the one hand. Well, let's just minimize it. It was shrapnel. It wasn't an assassin who failed inexplicably to take his target. It was shrapnel. No biggie, eh? Except for there's one dead American and 2 grievously injured. There's another amazing one here. Listen to this. No, that's my personal account here. Hold on. Oh, JD Vance. This guy here, Tim Miller. I don't know who Tim Miller is, but who is Tim Miller? Host of Bulwark Podcast. Oh, MSNBC. Like, dude, I can't tell what's parody anymore and what's not. The dude puts a cuck zone in his banner. I mean, it's not. Is it parody? Maybe it's parody. It's not parody. No, it's not parody. Bulwark, MSNBC analyst, which explains everything you need to know. Author, Why We Did It. Joe, I don't know what the hell that says. So, self-important podcaster. Haha, truth and jest. Weak and gay. More truth and jest. Hold on. Is this? I can't tell if this is parody. It's not parody. This is a real person. Forget the gay part. Who prides themselves on being weak? JD Vance just said they even tried to kill him about Trump. This is a deeply irresponsible lie. And if he had one iota of integrity left, he would stop. Someone literally tried to kill Donald Trump. Literally, not Rachel Maddow, mad cow, lying scoundrel. Literally. I'll put a they on it because I do believe it was more than just a lone crazed gunman who has 3 encrypted accounts and scampers around a highly secure area for hours with a drone. And I think it was more than one person who was involved in the deliberate security lapse and or the MK Ultra weaponization or allowing of this to happen. Fednapping in Whitmer, Fedsurrection on January 6th. I don't think that this was not something of an SS setup, pun intended. This guy comes in. It's deeply irresponsible. They tried to kill him, jackass. And I had more choice words for him yesterday, which included the dumb word and the F word. They're trying to minimize it, brush it under the rug, forget that it ever happened. But there's an even better one, which is just outrageous. This is the original one. Dean Gloss. I don't want to put this guy on blast. I feel bad because, when people with big accounts say tremendously stupid things that last long beyond the tweet being deleted. Listen to this. It's not a big deal. No one tried to shoot him. It was shrapnel. It wasn't a bullet. No biggie. Let's just move on with the week. Holy hell. Just imagine switching the Trump for anybody else. We had to hear about Nancy Pelosi's husband for weeks. And I appreciate people were making mean jokes about Nancy Pelosi's husband. We heard about that attack for weeks. Why? David DePop. We know everything about him. Canadian, in America on an illegal visa, Green Party supporting lefty nudist, freako. We heard about that for weeks. Why? Because they could weaponize it against the right because it was being passed off as a right-wing conspiracy theorist. This, they didn't want to talk about it 3 days later, but listen to this because it's actually shocking and horrifying what people don't understand they're admitting to. The Secret Service counter-snipers couldn't fire on the gunman until he fired first because it's illegal in Pennsylvania, outside of Philadelphia, to carry a rifle anywhere because it's legal, to carry a rifle anywhere, thanks to the GOP. So let's just start from ground 1.1. It's false to say that Secret Service could not fire. It's flat out wrong. Understand, however, what that factual incorrect statement necessarily implies. This guy is admitting in his own perception of reality. He's admitting with his own 2 eyes that crooks got the shot off on Trump first while Secret Service did nothing. That's what this says. That's what this guy is admitting. He believes he witnessed with his own eyes. He witnessed a shooter on a roof taking a clean shot, not getting shot on, despite being surveilled by Secret Service. And his explanation for that is, they had to hold off until he shot. Rules of engagement. Blame it on the Republicans. People understand exactly what they saw. And this lefty jackass comes out and tries to rationalize it by saying, they had to wait I acknowledge that they waited. I acknowledge that they had him in his sights and that he got off 3, if not 8 shots. But that's the way it had to be, and it's the Republicans' fault. I don't care about the factual incorrect. He's an idiot. I don't care about the politicizing of it. He's an idiot. He saw what we all saw. A man get off 3 to 8 clean shots despite being patently visible. I think that's all that we need to talk about today in terms of this. Never forget, ever, never. And don't let this fall out of the news cycle. Dan Bongino is obviously, first of all, he's got the inside scoop on a lot of this. He's doing the Lord's work, and he's on it. But I'm never gonna. This is the most shocking thing of my lifetime. And then you get the minimizers, the deniers, the conspiracy theorists. Oh, that Trump didn't really get shot in the ear. And then you get the scoundrel Mockingbird media utterly ignoring it. And once you understand the history of Mockingbird media, controlled by intelligence, you understand exactly why they're not putting this on blast. They don't want to put their own work on blast. That is my humble and definitively substantiated opinion. Now, speaking of government being corrupt ding-dongs, and speaking of the next thing, let me see here. There's another article here. This is hold on, where is it here? I pulled the article up. Here we go. Bird flu vaccine. Check this out. You know it's coming, people. Moderna scores federal funding for mRNA bird flu vaccine as pandemic fears grow. July 2nd, people. It's a month ago. You know it's coming. And if it's coming, and you know it's coming, you need to get familiar with the fine folks at the Wellness Company. America, pay attention. We're living in perilous times. Assassination attempts, coups seeking to take over our government, cybersecurity threats, and we're just heating up. Now, Forbes just put out an article that there's a $176 million vaccine grant given to Moderna to whip up an mRNA bird flu vaccine because the first one worked so damn well. Hashtag sarcasm. They're gearing up for the next big pandemic, and we can't trust the establishment with our health any longer. We must take matters into our own hands now. I'm protecting my family with a contagion emergency kit from the Wellness Company, and now you can too. The kit's no joke. It's for your frontline defense against whatever they throw at us. Next, it comes packed with ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, Z-Pack, Tamiflu, budesonide, along with a nebulizer so that you can rest easy knowing that you have the emergency meds on hand, along with a guidebook for safe use. Every family in America, because it's only available in America, needs to have at least one of these kits. It's like having an urgent care in the comfort of your own home. Get your contagion emergency kit now. It says the price of a cost of a single doctor visit. At the end of the day, you need to have these life-saving medications on hand so you won't have to think about how to get them if the poo-poo hits the fan. Be proactive, prepared, and take control of your health. Don't wait for the next health crisis. TWC, Tango Whiskey Charlie .health/Viva. Grab your contagion emergency kit now. TWC.health/Viva. $30 off with the promo code Viva. $30 off at checkout. Kits are only available in the USA. And in case anybody doesn't know what the website looks like, let me just show you what the website looks like, and then we're going to get into something else here. Bada bing, bada boom. Where is the website? Yeah, here it is. The Wellness Company. Look at this. Check it out, people. And I got a new phone. Let me just show you what this looks like here. I got a new phone. And the new phone screen is badass. There you go. Bada bing, bada boom. Yeah, I went to get a kayak in the water up in Canada with my old phone in my pocket. That's just a $1,500 mistake, just like that. 1 month out of warranty. Very frustrating. Okay, now before we get too far, and I'm going to go into the Viva Barnes Law tips because I can't bring them up now. You mentioned a Swedish bias recently. I haven't been able to find the podcast. Would you mind repeating the info? It's the material about Barris brings up. Okay, we're going to get to these later. Viva, was there some change to Canadian law or outlook to facilitate immigrants using Canada as the pass-through country and walk across the border into New York? Seems they are now using that as the stepping stone to a sanctuary city like in New York. No, that's from Schnookums. I actually think it's the other way around. I think they were using New York to cross over into Quebec through the Roxham Road. And what's his face there? Adams. What's the guy's name? Eric Adams was actually buying bus tickets for all of them to ship them up to the Quebec border so they could cross over here. Let me do a few of these before we get too far down. Mad Max 77 says, if cackling hyena Kamalis gets elected, America deserves to go down. V6 Neon doesn't deserve to go down because I don't deserve to go down with this. You don't deserve to go down with this. If she gets elected, what you are, I forget, I think it was Blair White who said it, but I had the same idea. If people vote for her, they don't understand, or they do understand, they're voting for packaging. They're basically voting for, 5 decent looking dudes that they whip together in a shitty band and call it One Direction. You're voting for packaging. You're voting for packaging, which means you are either a propagandist of the highest order, or you are an unwitting propagandist of the highest order. So V6 Neon says, mainstream media give Islamists Tommy Robinson's family location, info, and photo of his family. The Daily Mail have even stated that he is on the run when the holiday was planned for before court case. I'll talk about that in a second. Now I appreciate something here. Trud says, if we lose this election, that means we are a bunch of cowardly cucks and we deserve it. And then you got Rev68. United States Secret Service doesn't ever record radio traffic. It's the WHCA that records the radio traffic. But I'll tell you, hold on. WHCA supports PPD and the VPD. I don't know what these acronyms mean offhand. Maybe Philadelphia Police Department and the, I don't know, not former presidents and CNO's events. WHCA wasn't at Butler, hence no recordings. I mean, look, what can you say? I mean, it's just if it's just orchestrated incompetence. But this was not radio. This was sound like Secret Service communications. Anyhow, okay, let's bring that out. Let me make sure that I gave Barnes the copy of the link. And hold on, before we even get there, link copied. Okay, boom. And now I escape from there. Let me go over to YouTube and get a few of these super chats, which I can no longer see. Where are they? Oh, I can't see the super chats anymore. All right, people, I'm going to apologize if I miss some of these super chats because it sometimes moves too fast. And All Good Guy says $5. Viva, the Apple TV app needs to be updated to use the keyboard. I can read the chat, but no text box to type into. Okay, I'll screen grab that. If Cackling Hyena gets elected, okay, I got that one. All right, people, there's one more thing that I wanted to talk about here before we get started. It was Tommy Robinson. So Tommy Robinson gets arrested last week. Oh, Barnes, you're in the house. Hold on, let me take you out while you get it ready. Hold on. Yeah, forget it, Barnes. You're going to do it while we're on camera. Tommy Robinson got arrested under the Terrorism Act, which from what I understand, I was listening to him on Russell Brand, and I'm going to try to get him back on, but he's on the run right now because his location was disclosed, the hotel he was staying at. And if you don't appreciate that Tommy Robinson is public enemy number one within a very large demographic, you're not paying attention. So that's it. Tommy Robinson is, whether it's on purpose or by accident, the Daily Mail, I don't think would deliberately dox Tommy, but he's in big fucking trouble. I mean, there's no other way to put it, and sorry for cussing. So I'm going to see if I can get him back on at some point this week. Robert, sir, how goes the battle?
Good. I wonder when Rumble Studio I'll be able to actually use my camera. For whatever reason, it says it's available, but it's never available once you're actually in.
Okay, I'm going to take that note and send it right back to the team. Robert, before we get going, actually, because I think I forgot to do this. Hold on. Be naked, people. When Barnes comes in unannounced, it's sort of like being naked. This is our second sponsor of the night. Be naked. If you're by the way, this is Naked Organs for anybody who doesn't get the pun yet. You'll get it in a second. If you're one of those people who uses the phrase toxic masculinity because you're intimidated by real men who embrace their primal instincts, you should probably turn this off right now, literally. Who's that guy that I was just talking about in the intro? Tim, who's weak. Forget the gay part, weak. So turn it off, whatever, Tim. As a man, you're the rock people depend on, a shoulder to ground, a fighter, a lover, and a protector of many. We at Rumble created Be Naked as a brand that celebrates manhood and champions masculinity. While we're on it, did you see, Robert, the guy who knocked over the pole vaults with his penis? Because apparently it was a very large penis. I'll see if I can find the video later. Men with real balls that share our enthusiasm for clean, non-woke, and agenda-free products dedicated to helping you dominate every challenge life throws at you. Because we all know that life will throw us tests, push us, challenge us. So when life kicks you and you need to kick back harder, you need to tap into the primal strength. This is why you need a supplement. Naked Organs, our signature product, will help you unleash your inner beast. Naked Organs come from the purest and strongest animals on earth, the fearless bison. I have eaten bison testicles for everybody who's really interested. It's nature's multivitamin powerhouse, delivering endless energy, regulating hormone health, boosting testosterone, and enhancing muscular recovery and natural creatine. Go to Be Naked right now and pick up some of the Naked organs to embrace your manhood. That's benaked.com/Viva. Use code Viva to save 15% off. Celebrate being a man, getting healthy, living naked, and putting your hard-earned dollars towards supporting freedom-loving creators like me on Rumble, not the woke mob. And I'm gonna bring that out. Robert, did you see the video of the pole vaulter, the high jumper, knocking it over with his ding dong? And they said, imagine you strive for excellence your entire life and you get disqualified because you have a larger than average genitalia. It was
well, it turned out he couldn't vault the pole because of his pole.
I made a similar joke when I was sharing that with my parents. Robert, sir, how's it going? What's the book behind you?
Soccernomics, about the nature of soccer. European football is known through most of the rest of the world. Though soccer, by the way, the term itself originated from England. They used to call it soccer until the mid-1970s as part of a British way of combining certain things back in the old days. Applicable, we got Olympic soccer that's coming to the semifinal stage tomorrow. And then European football in all of its league play starts this month, along with American football on the collegiate side starts this month. And then pro football on the American side will start around Labor Day.
What else? What are you smoking tonight? Or what are you not smoking until after
this
the
was
show?
a gift. It's called a Las Calaveras. Yeah, I haven't had. I don't think I've had it before. Gift of the cigar guy, so we'll see how it works.
What do we have on the menu tonight, Robert?
So we got James O'Keefe, big win over Project Veritas. Don Lemon against Elon Musk. Self-defense in Minnesota doesn't mean a lot, unfortunately. We got a lot of election cases. The trial of Tina Peters in Colorado being covered by Rachel Alexander, who's been on the show before. Voter registration issues subject to a lawsuit that's been filed. Ballot access in Pennsylvania. Voting rights up before the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. The efforts of the Biden administration to leverage federal law and federal enforcement powers to do a mass voter registration and mail-in voting campaign, now subject of a federal suit. We got a prisoner exchange in Russia. Fortunately for Joe Biden, apparently Joe Biden thought that he was the person being exchanged because after the prisoners came off, he hopped on the plane to go back to Russia.
Robert, he was thanking the pilots. It was absolutely nothing to do with him being senile. He was thanking the pilots.
Of course. I'm sure he was thrilled to discover he doesn't have to go to Russia. The border wall being required to be actually built with the money spent and allocated for it by a federal court ruling. Another good ruling in favor of Texas' ability to enforce its borders in terms of the buoys it's putting up in the river. A gun ban struck down finally in the state of New Jersey. Your right to make alcohol in your own home. Home stills, a federal law, finally struck down as unconstitutional. FCC's net neutrality runs into a little bit of borders in the courtroom itself. The cryptos and banks. When can you sue banks for facilitating fraud? This case involving crypto Ponzi schemes, but has broader applicability outside of that. In the Venezuelan elections that people had asked me to take a little bit of a look at to see what is the evidence about whether those elections were done with integrity and accuracy or not. And any other fun topics that hop up in tonight's conversation.
Now, I will say it because I first of all, I had to double check that Bill shared the news with the community before I would. But Bill Brown, who always shows us pictures of his beautiful pig, Templeton unexpectedly passed away just like spontaneously. No sickness, well before age. And Bill is anybody who has pets understands like it never gets easier and it never hurts less. And so Bill, we all love Templeton. I haven't told my kid yet. My kid's got a picture of Templeton up in his bedroom, but everybody's thinking about you, Bill. And anyways, the Bill is Templeton is now in a field and has a wonderful view of where a good view out there. What do we start with? Hold on, I wanted to say something about Project Veritas. I couldn't figure out which summary to do to announce the show tonight, so I went with the Elon Musk versus Don Lemon. So maybe we'll start with that. The vlog is out there, people. I put up a quick one before we got started. Robert, Don Lemon suing Elon Musk. What was it? Fraudulent representations, unjust enrichment, unlawful use of likeness and image, and alleging basically that Elon promised Don Lemon the sun and the moon. I'll pull up the terms of what he says he was promised by this contract. And Don Lemon says, I made all of these investments to do a show exclusively on X. Says that Elon Musk came to me and said, X needs me to rebrand their image, to shine up their tarnished image. This is what he actually alleged in the lawsuit. And he said, look, I made all these investments. Then after an interview, Elon cuts everything short, says we're done and through. And anybody who didn't see that interview, it's an embarrassment of an interview. And he's suing him for, what will be, I don't know, however many millions of dollars. He's suing in California. I don't know how that jurisdiction plays into the suit, the person who he's suing. What is your take on this? What do you think the chances of success are? And what of the venue in terms of favorable or not to Elon?
Well, I mean, that's because Twitter has forever been in the Northern District of California. So that's why the suit was presumably was filed there, as opposed to the interesting that he didn't file in the Southern District of New York, where he resides. I had prior litigation against Don Lemon, the related to alleged. Well, let's see. There was a resolution of that case, so I can't. I guess I can't discuss it any further beyond that. But I'll just say that the Southern District of New York seemed to be a very friendly jurisdiction to him politically. So it's interesting that he chose the Northern District of California instead, maybe because of something that was in the contract that wasn't ever signed. So what's basically Don Lemon's theory is that a contractual negotiation that does not result in a signed agreement gives you the right to bring a lawsuit for breach of contract, fraud, unjust enrichment. Is there any cases out there where failed contract negotiations gives you the right to sue for fraud? Gives you the right to sue for a breach of contract when there is no written contract that ever got signed? I mean, that's his problem. But I mean, I didn't see a lot of credibility to the suit. I mean, it was glaring. I kept looking in the suit. Okay, was there ever a written contract or not? And there wasn't. It's admitted like 3/4 of the way through the complaint. And the excuse is, well, that Musk said some things verbally that they interpreted as not requiring a written contract. I don't think so. So I think it's a incredulous claim about, it's like saying that you thought she was going to tie the knot and then she didn't, and you're going to sue over what exactly? I mean, until you tie the knot, you haven't tied the knot. Until it was signed, there was nothing signed.
Listen to this here. It's during Lemon's June 16, 2023 conversation with Musk, Musk asked Lemon to enter an exclusive partnership. I want you on X. This is what you should be doing. Lemon,
by the way, is negotiations all the time. Imagine translating that into a fraud, unjust enrichment claim. I mean, it's kind of legally laughable, isn't it?
Oh, it's laughable that Lemon thinks that Elon needed Lemon for rebranding for X.
Oh yeah, that part's just funny.
Lemon expressed reservations on entering into a partnership with X due to ongoing controversies surrounding the X platform. Oh my goodness. But narcissism. Listen to this. In response and to induce Lemon into enter the exclusive yada yada, Musk represented to Lemon that he would have full authority and control over the work he produced, even if disliked by defendants, and that there would be no need for a formal written agreement or to fill out paperwork. Let me say what you couldn't say at the beginning. I don't know anything about the case that you were involved in, other than what I've read in the news. At the beginning of this lawsuit, where he describes himself, you've got to see this because it's freaking hilarious.
Did he include all the public attention that came to that lawsuit that preceded his sudden departure from CNN? I'm guessing no.
No, he didn't. Didn't mention that he was unceremoniously fired because of controversy from Twitter, from CNN. Listen to this. Don Lemon is an American journalist, best known for his work with CNN from 2006 until his tenure ended in fired for cause, from what I understand. Relatable and charismatic, Lemon's work defies genre, candidly exposing injustice and the resiliency of the human spirit. At all times throughout his career, Lemon has been an exemplary journalist known, quote, for sticking his finger in the eyes of powerful people. For
I
those
thought
who
it
don't,
was, yeah, no, yeah, that was an interesting reference. I don't know if I was Don Lemon's counsel, I would reference anything he does with his finger.
it's sticking his fingers in eyes. Nobody says that. And given the allegations that he stuck his fingers in his genitals and then in the nose of the guy, I forget the guy's name, and then said, "Do you like Pussy or Dick?" Because the guy was gay. No. And then he was promised. It was paragraph 24 where he's the amounts that he says he was promised, like $1.5 million. Where was it here? Hold on, let me just get this real quick. Like it was, I can't find it. Oh, here we go. In exchange, defendants agreed they would pay him $1.5 million guaranteed, $200,000 upfront within 3 business days. This is how business works. $300,000 within 3 days. Let's see here. Paid quarterly installments with additional incentives, including one option to renew this 1-year deal 2 times with the same terms at Lemon's sole discretion. No one agrees to that, period. 60% of the gross advertisement revenue that X received from programmatic advertising on Lemon's content. Performance of threshold payments for reaching 4 million followers and 500,000 for reaching 6 million followers. So okay, they might have had these discussions. 500,000 in advertising credits on the X platform. So he gets to advertise his own show and then reap benefits for whatever success that would yield. For a period of 48 months, 10% of net revenue that X receives once it exceeds $350,000 for content creators that Lemon referred to X. And 6, that all content created by Lemon, originally or distributed on X, is wholly owned by him. I don't think this contract ever happened. Oh God, no, disable camera. What did I just do here? So, Robert, it's a joke. I mean, no good deed goes unpunished. That interview, Elon, is going to cost you however much it's going to cost you to defend this if you don't choose to pay off a nuisance settlements. All right. Do we do the other one before we head over to
Sure.
We'll do Project Veritas, another good it's sort of a win. It's an objective win, right? So this is the lawsuit of Project Veritas against James O'Keefe, alleging oh geez, I'm having a total brain fart. They were trying to get an injunction enjoining him from contacting donors, seeking damages, as a result of their breakup, and it was dismissed by way of directed verdict.
Well, so they were seeking a preliminary injunction, and the preliminary injunction that the Project Veritas was seeking against O'Keefe would have basically eviscerated O'Keefe's ability to operate. And that was the goal. And it was that they thought they could contractually force him to not compete at all with Project Veritas after the disastrous handling of Project Veritas, of James O'Keefe, by the new board at Project Veritas. And a lot of the claims were ridiculous. There are limits to non-compete agreements. Of course, the Federal Trade Commission has rendered many non-compete agreements illegal under federal law now, but they didn't even need to rely upon that aspect. They had a lot of robust New York law that supported their claims. When we discussed this complaint when it was first filed, said it did not have the legal merits to warrant any kind of preliminary injunction against O'Keefe. But O'Keefe had to spend the time and the money and the effort to defend against it. But the court recognized the same thing, that there was simply no good grounds at all to enjoin at any level, any aspect of James O'Keefe's activities. Because it wasn't just the part of the preliminary injunctive request was denied, all of it was denied. So it's still scheduled for trial on the merits, but basically Project Veritas's case is DOA. It's not going to get anywhere functional other than waste people's money and time. And it just represents the disastrous handling, which we talked about at the time. The board at Project Veritas was incompetent and incapable of discharging their duties. They betrayed the point and purpose of their donors. They pushed James O'Keefe out the door like suicidal, inane idiots. and whether they were doing it at the behest and the behalf of some, ulterior interest, well, we may never know. Maybe O'Keefe will discover some of that evidence in the ongoing case, so that there's more for him to discover than for Project Veritas to discover. But some of the Project Veritas types that justified and rationalized their behavior were predicting differently with this preliminary injunction that the truth would come out. Well, several key Project Veritas witnesses apparently were no-shows. They didn't even show up at the hearing. And then some others didn't have the evidence that they claimed to have. And so once again, it was proven that the allegations against James O'Keefe were baseless. And credit to James O'Keefe for prevailing so that he can continue to operate. His exposure, his latest great success, media coup, has been exposing Act Blue.
Mhm.
And that Act Blue appears to be illicitly laundering donations disguised as being small donors' contributions that appear to be coming from someone else and not given actually by those small donors. And he's detailed this now for over a year, but recently was detailing it in more degree concerning Kamala Harris's sudden fundraising surge after the announcement that she would replace Joe Biden. And now multiple attorneys general are opening criminal investigations and civil inquiries into whether or not Act Blue is engaged in money laundering and illegal donations to the Democratic Party. And that's benefit we wouldn't have if Project Veritas's objective had been achieved.
I'm going to read this super chat because I can't bring it up elsewhere, and I think the person might have put it through twice. Alan Tanas says, longtime watcher, first time super chatter. I'm always happy you guys are on top of the stories that matter much, like another man was on top of Rekida's wife, but I am not one to blow. Okay, I'm not reading the rest of this because I'm not. Okay, not sure I get the jokes, but I think I might get the jokes. So we did discuss it at the time, the extent and application of overbroad and non-compete, non-solicitations, and you don't get to strike them down and say, well, we went a little bit too broad, so let's narrow it down. It's you succeed or you fail. So they said it's too broad on an injunctive basis, which means it's pretty much going to be too broad on the merits.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, completely. So the non-compete is DOA. The attempts to prevent him from raising funds is DOA. The attempts to prohibit him from contacting people is DOA. The attempt to prevent him from operating is DOA. So it now goes to a trial on the merits. Project Veritas should just drop it and move on. It's been a disaster for them. It only continues to be a disaster for them. They can pay whatever their lawyers' legal fees are, but it's a waste of money and a waste of effort. And the only question is when the board gets sued for the breach of their duties to their donors, because that's all they've done from my viewpoint over the last year. But at least O'Keefe is free now from those restrictions and restraints, the threat of that litigation and what it could cause, and can pursue the more nobler causes that has been his life's calling now for 2 decades.
This was not on the menu, but Robert, if you don't know about it, you'll tell me. Who was I listening to? It was during the congressional hearings last week where I had, speaking of employees who get dismissed and then sue or get sued, Peter Strzok and Lisa Page were compensated $1.2 million and $800,000 respectively for having allegedly had their privacy violated through the disclosure of their text messages. Had you been following this?
Yeah, it's just a payoff. It's the Biden administration giving them a payoff and rewarding them for all of their activities and sabotaging President Trump. I have a legitimate case against the FBI on behalf of former FBI agent Robin Gritz. They're not doing anything to resolve those kind of cases. So it shows how corrupt the system is. And this is the same FBI that whose director, Christopher Wray, Federalist Society guy, who weaseled his way into the position of the FBI because it was a poor appointment by Trump, who lied about whether or not Trump was shot and shot at by a would-be assassin. And then that was followed up by the deputy director of the FBI gaslighting the world and lying to Congress about the social media history of the alleged assassin, Thomas Crooks. that he said that they had found an unidentified account. What he didn't tell anybody, it was an account on Gab, and it suggested that he was, right wing and anti-Semitic and anti-immigrant. It was completely false. He basically was on Gab to troll Paul Watson, to troll Bill Mitchell, to troll a bunch of conservatives and tell them how great Joe Biden is, how great his immigration policies are. There was nothing about him that was anti-Semitic or anything else. He was, by at least to what degree we have any political footprint, a lefty, a donor to the left. And yet there you had the deputy director following up Christopher Wray's lies with his own lies. And in the same week, they're paying off a couple of criminals who are operating at the top of the FBI, Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, in the same week. It shows how the only solution for the FBI is for the FBI to not exist. It's that simple. That they have proven themselves incapable of being a constitutionally compliant law enforcement body. They will weaponize their power to misuse it and abuse it against civil rights and civil liberties of dissidents in America. That's mostly what they've done throughout their entire tenure in history. If you really study it, it's just gotten egregious in the past decade. And so the payoffs, the rewards to these two corrupt agents is just further evidence that the agency cannot be trusted, and needs to be probably disbanded.
It is just flabbergasting and enraging. I believe these are all passive aggressive acts of provocation, although they might be more aggressive. Paying him off $1.2 million.
Well, and they're sending a message. Everybody else out there that wants to betray Trump, you'll get rewarded. Even if Trump somehow gets in office and takes away your position, we'll make sure you get millions of dollars on the backside. And this is just what the government is paying him. It doesn't include what CNN is paying him. It doesn't include the book deals, their lucrative book deals they're getting without justification. So, I mean, it's just, this is the message. To betray Trump, sabotage Trump. And they do this at the same time the FBI is busy covering up whatever really happened in the assassination attempt of Donald Trump. So, I mean, it's not, the timing is not unintended.
Because it was relatively recent news. That was from June or something of this year, where when I was listening to the hearing, I was like, oh my God, I thought I would have known that if it had happened. Happened very recently. It's taxpayer dollars. During the same
week, they even attempted to give a 9/11 plea deal to the alleged 9/11 plotters. And it got so much public blowback on the eve of an election that they had to withdraw it. Now, I don't know what the heck the court of Guantanamo is. I'm still not a fan of these, whatever these courts that aren't courts, laws that aren't laws, covered but not covered by our Constitution. Not a fan of this. But the fact that they were even contemplating such a special deal to such individuals on the eve of the election just gives you a sense of where the mindset is of this administration.
Though I had one other question, which I think I forgot what I was going to ask. Oh, sorry, the Act Blue. It's right here. It's in the. We'll do a couple of chats before we head over to Rumble. People, we're going to end on YouTube and Twitter and go vote with our feet, our eyeballs, our dollars. Create a parallel economy. I will put up the entire stream in podcast on Podbean and on Viva Clips tomorrow. Barnes, wouldn't Act Blue be required to cut a 1098 to the small donors? We talked about this before. I mean, I don't know what that means in 1098, but they're objectively
tax. But that's for people you pay, not people you receive money from.
And you don't get a tax credit if it's under $20. So they do these micro donations and just do them all like.
But there's a question of, are they laundering funds? And then could that trigger potential tax liability depending on the way in which they were doing so? Yes.
And there was this one here. Barnes, what are your oft repeated 3 things that must be done to help determine if an election is fair? Votes cast is less than equal to registered voters, signature matches, and 3.
Oh, you mean, yeah, that if you have more votes than voters, you got a problem. That's always number one. The signature matches on mail-in balloting, that the signatures need to match. The generally the third I say to look for in whether an election was credible or not we'll get to this in the Venezuelan election, which I guess we can progress into, is unusual disparate turnout between similar groups. So to give an example, in 2020, there was unusual turnout at nursing homes right next to each other. One had a 60% turnout, one would have a 95% turnout. Unusual turnouts at apartment buildings of similarly situated demographics of who's occupying them geographically, etc. One would have 65% turnout of its tenants, another one 95% turnout. Right? That's usually a giveaway that somebody has filled out a lot of those ballots, other than the actual alleged voter who is purported to have done so. So that's usually the quick way to detect whether election irregularities or dubious ballots have been cast is comparing like-minded unusual voting turnouts among similar demographics, signature matches not matching, or the signature match check not being conducted. And always, like as sporadically happens whenever they audit the Detroit, having more votes than voters in a precinct always tends to be a problem.
Robert, okay, so we're gonna end on YouTube and Twitter. Come on over to Rumble while we do that, or vivabarneslaw.locals.com while we do the migration. It's in the pinned comment, people. Thank you to our sponsors. The links are in the description, so show some love. Kimmy B says, who became the director of Veritas? I cannot remember his name. It was it had a T.
One of
was
them,
it
the guy I
Timmerant?
ran into at the Republican National Convention was Matthew Timmond or something.
Timmerant. It's Timmerant.
Timran, that's it.
Yep. Who does it? I don't think he likes either of us, but I think he hates you more than me, Robert.
Yeah.
Bread Pit Unbread. It says Barnes wouldn't act blue. Okay, we did that. And Liverett Senior. Barnes. Oh, I read that one too. Peace is the prize. Here's 10 cents in 1930s money. Cheers for Brazil. I finally figured out a VPN for using Rumble. Thanks for Viva and Barnes for speaking the truth regardless of the subject. And then we got new at Political Alinomatic, the real Encryptus. Enhanced quizzes and media analysis support our growth and deepen your political insights. Donate here, and it's givesendgo.com, PCAT. And what do we hear? Barnes, this is from Sunbeam Valley. Amish in the stands at DJT rally in Pennsylvania. Some said they aren't real. They're fake plants dressed up. Also that Amish can't get involved in politics because it goes against a religion. Is this true?
No, that's not true. They were likely Mennonite. The reference is that Amish, the traditional Amish don't appear for cameras or videographer, deliberately by choice. Mennonites generally do. So that and you do have some Amish communities that a lot of Mennonites share a lot in common with the Amish. Just some of them they may drive, they may use cell phones, they may things like that, but they dress the same. So it's just a different degree to which they accept certain modern contemporary technologies or not. But there's nothing in the Amish religion at all that prohibits public participation in elections at all. That's not the case.
If I were to have referred to a Mennonite as Amish, would I be an idiot?
No, I mean to a degree that they are very well comparable, and you could say indistinguishable in many respects.
Because I saw when I was in Wisconsin and I saw a family of what I thought were Amish in at the zoo, and I struck up a conversation, presuming they were Amish, and I hope I didn't insult anybody. All right, so here's what we're doing now, people. We're ending it on YouTube and Twitter, and we shall go over to Rumbles and Locals in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Come on over now, and we'll take over the rest of the subject matter there. All right, it's going, and I'm going to go tweak out and end this in YouTube afterwards. All right. So can we talk about, I have not been following the South American elections, Venezuelan elections, Maduro. Okay, I don't know anything. I thought at one point that he had political support, and then I saw it was not a meme, $1 million or $15 million for his arrest and conviction, and I'm like, arrest and conviction, which is a big investment to the person who's going to risk their life doing that. What the hell's going on south of the border, Robert?
So they recently had an election. The election commission declared Maduro the winner by about a 7-point margin. The United States government and a range of other governments have denounced the election, saying that it was a fraudulent election. It's interesting what the U.S. State Department considers a fraudulent election. Given how the people that occupy that office at the State Department, how they got there. But so I was curious about, okay, what are the specificity of the allegations about how the election was stolen in some manner, didn't represent the populace, the will of the voters. And the only thing really given was exit polling data that that I don't trust at all. The other thing is, I think they clearly doctored it, in my opinion, because they were predicting, they had exit polls showing Maduro losing by 30, 35 points. And I'm like, there was almost nothing predicting that before the election. And I was like, so as soon as I saw that, I was like, this feels like when North Korea does an election and he wins 99.9%. And the 0.1% got executed. I mean, it's like, come on, let's not be ridiculous. So I dug into it, and there's a range, like a lot of the defenders of Venezuela, people like folks that are at the convo couch, come from more the left, sort of anti-empire perspective. So like they're always obsessed with being pro-Palestinian. I'll never fully get that. Why the left anti-empire crowd has to love Islamist radicals. I just won't. It's like, good luck trying to live there, if you really believe that. But putting that aside, I listened to some of their criticism, watched some of the various, sort of took a mini deep dive into it. Members of the board sent me some links to, if you want useful information about a country these days, often look for random travelers, like these people that do travel vlogs. A lot of them are non-political. Now, the ones that are often promoted by YouTube, you can't trust, quite frankly. But if you dig in enough, by the way, there's this like Canadian refugee who now lives in Venezuela. This was pointed out by one of our members of the board. This guy's on a little YouTube channel. So what's interesting is, because my biggest curiosity first was, okay, what's the grounds to say the election was invalid? What happened in the election itself? And then the second part was, okay, if Maduro did legitimately win, why did he legitimately win, given some of the issues present in Venezuela? And so in the first part, for those that don't remember, here were the problems in the U.S. election, whether there were constitutionally qualified voters. And what does that mean? It means as we'll get into in a later case, under the elections clause, the state legislature sets the rules for how a presidential election will be conducted in their state, and only them. And so was the people who voted, were they qualified to vote according to the rules set by the legislature of their state? So part one, where they're only constitutionally qualified voters. Those people can include people who are simply not properly registered in their county, people who are not who have multiple residencies in multiple counties, not just multiple residencies between states, which is another category. People not registered at a legitimate address, like post office boxes or parking lots. People who are too young to vote in the presidential election. The people who, in certain instances, certain kinds of felons don't have, in some states, the right to vote for a period of time. So look, and then of course, dead people, people who are dead at the time they supposedly voted. So those would all be constitutionally unqualified people to vote. Then whether the method by which they voted was constitutionally qualified. So if they voted in person, did they comply with the rules and the way they went about doing so? Some states require identification. Some states require other things in the process of the vote. Or if they voted by mail, did they meet the constitutional qualifications for, again, the rules set by the legislature of their state for being able to vote by mail? Did they properly obtain that ballot? Did they properly return that ballot? Did their signature on the ballot match their confidential signature on the voter file, as is required in most jurisdictions for mail-in ballots? And then third, when they canvassed the vote and counted the vote, did they do it according to the rules set by the legislature of their state to make it constitutionally qualified as a canvass and count? So in Georgia, for example, since this issue percolated up this week with President Trump's criticism of Ratburger, the Secretary of State of Georgia, and the Governor Kemp, who's Governor WEF Wuss governor, the Trump was rightly critical of how they handled 2020. Even Georgia's election officials in other jurisdictions have admitted there were problems with what happened. But of course, Kemp was denying there was ever any issue and saying there's no issue for 2024. But in fact, as Cleta Mitchell, who I was co-counsel with during a period of time representing President Trump in Georgia, publicly stated, the Georgia election contest, with thousands of pages of evidentiary documentation, showed that the margin of victory was less than the number of people who either were not constitutionally qualified to vote, or that their method of casting the ballot was not constitutionally qualified and confirmed with an actual signature match, and that the method by which the canvass and count took place in Georgia was not constitutionally qualified because it did not comport and comply with the rules of the Georgia state legislature. That happened at every single stage, and the number of ballots was over 100,000 that were in question and in doubt in an election that was decided by 12 or 13,000 or 11,000, whatever the final number ended up being, because it kept shifting there in Georgia. The question is, what about Venezuela? Very interesting. Venezuela's election mechanism, by the way, might be some helpful lessons here in the United States. So in order to vote in Venezuela, you not only got to have you can only vote at your precinct. You can't just vote anywhere. You have to have ID. You've got to do a fingerprint confirmation after you vote, right? So they're really making sure one person doesn't vote twice, and someone that's not qualified ever votes in the first place. They don't have a bunch of mass mail-in voting. You put into a machine your vote, but the machine is not like the Dominion machines here. The machine's more like a typewriter. What happens is you put it out and it prints out, so it stores it digitally, but it's not connected at any level to the internet. And what it prints out is a receipt, a paper receipt. You get to check to make sure it's accurate. And then you separately put that paper receipt in a separate ballot box. So you got dual level confirmation of the process. And it is party observers of all candidates are allowed to watch this entire process, including the counting and canvassing of the ballot, which is what should have happened in Georgia, did not.
Well, let me just try to play a little devil's advocate, just checking the population. Venezuela's, say, 30 million rounding up. The argument's going to be, what does this cost? And is it feasible at a scale of 350 million? I'm asking a rhetorical question.
Venezuela. They're a broke country. They're broke. It's like that meme where the little kid is doing the math and saying, Georgia's got 3 cents here and 9 cents here. And so how much money does George have? And the little kid says, George broke, and just starts laughing. That's the conclusion. So we could easily do it here. The world employs forms of identification. The world employs paper ballot proof and production. So, and by the way, Venezuela's managed to count this vote within 24 hours. I think they're still counting in Arizona. I mean, how ridiculous is that?
It's planned or deliberate incompetence. Oh, and by the way, had to double check as well. The reason why there's a strong, I don't want to say Islamic presence in Venezuela, I actually had Michael Yon on who explained it. There's a lot of Hezbollah, for whatever the reason, that has settled. There's a strong Iranian connection to Venezuela, which is accounted for why there are villages of Hezbollah entities in Venezuela. So that people who were watching that interview knew that answer.
What's interesting is all the critics. Now, the Carter Center observers said that they were unhappy with the election, but they were talking about the context in which the election occurred. They didn't identify a single problem with that part of the election. I kept waiting give me the details as to how the vote was not accurately represented. And nobody was producing it. You got Canada, the whole Western world, the U.S., everybody's against the Venezuelan government, and nobody can produce any documentary proof of what went wrong in the election beyond their criticism of how the election was conducted and who was qualified as a candidate and the way in which the media campaign was done. I was like, well, by that standard, 2020 was definitely stolen. Go back to the Hunter Biden CIA nonsense about the Hunter Biden laptop being fake as one of many illustrative examples. So under the State Department standards for Venezuela, most of the people in the State Department shouldn't be there because that 2020 election was stolen even worse by any metric compared to Venezuela. But so I'm not finding objectively verifiable evidence that the election didn't represent the will of the voters. So then I went and dug in. I was like, well, everything I've heard about Venezuela has been negative. Why would people vote Maduro back in? And here there's a couple of factors. Number one is about 4 million people have fled Venezuela. It might be up to 7 million, depending on what estimates you get. What does that mean? It means an election decided by 700,000 votes, many of the people that would vote against Maduro are no longer in Venezuela and no longer qualified to vote in Venezuela. So that's probably a big factor. Second factor is he managed to get at least some modicum of control over their hyperinflation problem. Still bad. It's just not as insanely bad as it was a half decade ago. Third, they increased community policing efforts. And here is a Trump criticism. They've encouraged, shall you say, a lot of their gangs that were rising up in Venezuela to leave Venezuela. And they've set up shop throughout the rest of Latin America. And by the way, are now setting up shop in the United States of America. It's a gang that's going to make MS-13 look like some kids in a park. But what does that do? All of a sudden, a crime problem that was insane 5 years ago has now been managed and is not as bad. And you can see this in a bunch of tourist videos over the last year where they're talking to Venezuelans, they're doing the trip. They're like, okay, crime is no longer what it once was here in Venezuela. So he stabilized things enough. And then it comes down to his opponent. The problem is the Venezuelan opposition is a bunch of corporate oligarch types backed by the U.S. deep state. I mean, remember, we ridiculously pretended that Guaido or whatever his name was the president of Venezuela. I mean, it was totally fake. It was like that scene from High Plains Drifter where the little midget gets to be mayor and sheriff. And he stands up on the bar and says, I'm the mayor. I'm the sheriff. And it's Clint Eastwood's way of mocking the local town. And even a Republican congressman admitted this in a hearing this past week, saying maybe that was kind of a mistake. And now, because what he's done is the same thing they do in Cuba, the same thing they do in Iran, which is when you do these broad sanctions like the U.S. has issued against Venezuela, it gives an excuse to the Venezuelan leadership for their economic troubles that are often, in my view, as much a product of their mismanagement of the economy. But now they have a cop-out. The reason for the economy is the bad U.S. that wants to come in and steal all our oil again.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it gives a national rallying cry to the Maduro audience that is not credible coming from an opposition that is so tied to the old corporate oligarchic elites of Latin America, and especially there in Venezuela. And it's also the Venezuelan lead opposition party had been aligned with welcoming the U.S. military invasion. That's not someone people are probably going to vote for in the Venezuelan populace, whatever they think of the Maduro regime. That they're not wanting U.S. military to take over their country instead, at least those that have stayed in Venezuela. And then the one thing that's semi-worked, I emphasis on the word semi, but has been the various social programs put in place by Hugo Chavez. There's a part of those that are still popular because they're the only means by which some people in Venezuela get food or healthcare. And the opposition had suggested they would scrap them entirely. Well, that's not really an answer, right? Imagine if someone was running in the United States saying, I promise to get rid of Social Security and Medicare. How well would that go? So I think that Maduro legitimately won the election. I think the majority of the voters did, in fact, favor him over the deep state sponsored opposition. And that and even though I'm by no means a fan of the Maduro regime, you can look at, by the way, old Hugo Chavez, the more populist wing of Hugo Chavez's original political base, and there's documentaries of them being very critical of the Maduro regime in ways that it's become statist more than it is populist. That being said, one little component of this, it's like when Ben Shapiro and everybody calls them socialist. Well, I want an objective metric for socialism. Objective metric is the state owns the economy or a large share of it. Well, folks, the federal government of the United States of America owns a larger share of GDP in the United States with its state governments than the Venezuelan government does. over the Venezuelan government. So what was interesting by this guy who's the refugee from, I call him refugee, but kind of from Trudeau's Canada, down there. There's parts of Venezuela that are almost ungovernable, but that have become like little anarchistic, quasi-libertarian havens because you just do whatever you want. And that's a part of Venezuela that hasn't been adequately covered by Western press that's so universally hostile. You can't trust Maduro, and you can't trust the critics of Maduro. And it makes it brutally difficult to get honest, independent, objective information. But from what I can tell, the election wasn't stolen.
What of not the charges, I mean, they're relatively old, but the $15 million for the conviction for narco terrorism of Maduro, I mean, are they involved in
I find that funny because that's basically a charge you could wage against almost every leading member of the Central Intelligence Agency for the last 50 years. So
I mean,
there is evidence that he has aligned himself with various drug groups and gangs. The degree of that evidence is disputed and debated because, again, you have the same problem where either people are entirely in Maduro's camp or so obsessively anti-Maduro that you don't get honest, accurate information in between. And it's brutally difficult to extract that intel and information. So I suspect he has ties to those elements. But I would say this, if his goal was to be a narco-terrorist, the best way to do it would be to align with the United States, because the United States is better at doing that business than anybody else.
Yeah, but why don't they go after, I mean, Xi Jinping, or why don't they go after China for narco-terrorism, for flooding the border with fentanyl? If there's ever a country that should succeed, it's Venezuela. They have so much oil, natural resources, meat. I mean, I think it's a wonder.
They badly mismanaged the oil economy. But there are economists that have done a study that have said that if you look at Venezuela in the last 25 years, that the biggest indicator of, other than the price of oil, which has historically always been whether Venezuela goes up and down, Venezuela has also gone way down under right-wing governments. So there's sort of a conservative mythology out there that says Venezuela was rich and prosperous, and then the left came and destroyed it. It's not really true, to be blunt about it. In fact, if you just track up and down, because they're tied to oil. And as long as you're tied to oil, you're in trouble. But the U.S. sanctions appear to have been the proximate cause to their most immediate economic issues. And we created that by unnecessary involvement and intervention, in my view. If we would have just stayed out of it, then I think the government would have collapsed under its own incompetence. Mm-hmm. But once again, we have helped sustain a government we're hostile to because of our own incompetence.
I don't know that I'm thinking of a segue, Robert. That might be a good segue into.
Speaking of elections, I mean, while they're busy trying to overthrow Maduro in Venezuela, like we need another foreign war on our table, when we got Iran rattling the cage, but in the Israeli-Palestinian war that's ongoing, may expand, sending a bunch of ships out there, ongoing war in Europe. What, we need another continent with war? I mean, what are we going to do? Make sure we cover all our bases, get all the continents in war?
Hey, I mean, I'm reading, the Roman Empire expanding, fighting foreign conflict, reading the creation of America, opposing taxes that were going to England so they can wage war across the world to feed their empire. I mean, it's like, this is history rhyming, not necessarily repeating. But sorry, I cut you off. Where were you going?
Well, let's talk about honest elections. Here, one of the people that was trying to expose the problems of the 2020 election, an election official in Colorado known as Tina Peters, rather than investigate the allegations that the 2020 election was being done in an illegal, illicit, unconstitutional manner there in Colorado, and whether or not the Dominion and the state officials were trying to destroy the evidence by prematurely getting rid of all the election files in violation of federal and state law, which required 2 years or more, 22 months to 25 months, depending on the relevant and applicable law, to keep records. Instead, that election official who blew the whistle on what they were trying to do is herself now subject to the state of Colorado trying to put her in prison in the case of Tina Peters.
It's the exact same situation, mutatis mutandis, of the woman in Pennsylvania who records her own corrupt proceedings, and in so providing the evidence or obtaining the evidence, breaks the law because the laws are set up to make sure that you can't whistleblow. So this woman has apparently downloaded the records of the voting machines, and I'm trying to figure out exactly how she did it, because it sounds bad on its face, but then you sort of read through the situation, and she apparently had the authorization to contract this out to a third-party contractor to mirror the information only for the purposes of preservation. But then somehow some of it got online. I don't know how that happened. And so they're going after her now for having violated the law, allegedly. And she's Rachel Alexander's following the trial. It started the other day, and that's where it's at. I mean, the question is, and I haven't been following the trial, although it's being live streamed. Did she have a legislative or a legal basis to actually mirror the information using a third-party contractor? And how did the information get online? But bottom line, what the hell were they going to? They're going to destroy the voter information before they're legally allowed to do it, and nobody's going to say boo.
You know, I think her case, along with Julian Assange and Edward Snowden's, reveals the need for legislative reform in the form of that. I think it should always be a defense to any criminal charge. Now, you can argue that it's already kind of there in necessity and other circumstances, but courts won't enforce it in this manner. There should be a specific whistleblowing defense that if what you did was in the better public interest of doing so, which again is supposed to be a justification defense, some cases necessity defense, depending on how it's interpreted and construed, but courts are not enforcing it that way. There should be a whistleblower defense that what you did was blowing the whistle on more serious, significant, and consequential events, or at least believed you were doing so. And that should be a defense at all times to all criminal prosecutions. In this case, the judge, who is basically a prosecutor, it's another case of another court embarrassing the rule of law by his partisan corruption in favor of the prosecution of the case, prohibiting and precluding her from presenting critical evidence on her behalf, preventing and precluding her defense counsel from merely asking questions that could be pertinent to her defense, and instructing the jury in such a manner as to basically guarantee a conviction of some sort. Now, what she's charged with is that the manner and method by which she found a way to copy the servers. For those that don't know, the background is the county. It was a Dominion county, a county where Dominion servers were involved in the election. Dominion software was involved in the election of 2020. And the Dominion was coming in to do an upgrade. And her concern became that Dominion would use the excuse of an upgrade to erase all files of what took place in 2020.
And not to interrupt you, but just to draw the analogy, yeah, upgrading and we lose information, like what happened when they merged the cell phones in January 6th and then lose all text messages. Oh, well, like it has to be done now. Sorry. So
exactly, it's one of the most common methods and mechanisms to erase evidence. So she wanted to find a way to make sure that they copied those the hard drives before any upgrade could occur. The allegations against her, that the method by which she did so was to bring in somebody. This is again just the allegations that that used somebody else's ID in order to be able to achieve it, and so they're claiming that that constituted criminal impersonation, attempts to illicitly interfere with an official and an official process, and and his official misconduct. So they've tagged on all these criminal charges. Now, the sensational part that the press was covering is twofold. One, the press's headlines have been almost all false in this regard. The press's headlines are, she's being criminally prosecuted for tampering with the 2020 election.
Now, Robert, she's catering to conspiracy theorists as if it hasn't been proven over and over again that there were anomalies. Sorry.
Oh, yes. I mean, there's also so they made a big deal about, there's video published that showed the passwords and that was such a severe security breach. But it turns out there was nothing illegal about the video recording is what's come out in the trial. And that the passwords are already changed number two. So in fact, that meant nothing. It was just one big red herring. And then, speaking of red herrings, you should watch the original presumed innocent film. The TV series on Apple's okay, but the original film was brilliant. One of my favorite criminal defense lawyer presentations, who says something about red herrings during the trial, which is brilliant at multiple levels. Masterful presentation in that case. But basically what they presented is not any evidence of election tampering by her, not any evidence that there was any real security breach. It's just they're arguing that the person that came in that accomplished the hard drive copying used somebody else's ID. That appears to be the whole case, as far as I can tell so far. And but again, Rachel Alexander at Tennessee Star and one of the Arizona publications, and you can follow her on X, is covering it. There is some live streaming. The judge has been restricted about what live streaming he's allowed, not allowed of the trial process to date. But I'm not sure what the defense is on the using somebody else's password to someone else's ID to get in to do it. And that's what it shows as the necessity of a whistleblowing defense, right? They went after Julian Assange and Edward Snowden because there is no whistleblowing defense recognized in American law, even though they're supposed to be under the laws of justification, necessity, and duress and other comparable provisions that, in my view, are analogous, but the courts just don't enforce it. So we need a whistleblowing defense for all criminal defendants. I may bring it up with Robert Kennedy and people. Trump's world. Trump's too busy worried about immunity for cops. So I don't think that's the number one thing that should be on everybody's agenda. God bless him. But hopefully we'll see more embrace of that. From my view, she's an honest whistleblower who's being targeted because of her whistleblowing, not because they're so outraged that somebody used the wrong ID to walk into the building.
Now that you brought it up, and only because you brought it up, a bit of a critique of Trump, the focus of his policies. I know that we're aligned on, the Rittenhouse thing. What did you think about the Rittenhouse scandal, or the drama of the weekend, Robert?
So, Kyle, all Kyle did, he lives in Texas. Texas is not going to be a close state. So his vote, he could probably make more noise with his vote by it not being for Trump, frankly, in that context. Is that he said that because he was concerned that Trump was sporadic on the Second Amendment in his first term, that he was going to write in Ron Paul as a way to incentivize Trump to be better in his second term. Now, and all these people that, some of them people funded his defense and the rest, apparently decided that they were entitled to control him for the rest of his life. And were publicly saying, all mad and enraged and climbing the walls. And it's like, well, he has a conscientious choice to make whatever choice he wants. If you think his choice is wrong, persuade him. And just saying, you can't let Harris win, the lesser of two evil argument. I've never found a persuasive argument. Make an argument on specific policies as with Trump, we'll get this, and this. Without Trump, we'll get this, and this, and this. And that's why it's better. Instead, it was just mass demonization of him. Now, of course, he talked to some Trump people. And a day later, he retracted all that, said I'm fully on board backing Trump. Now, some of this is one of the people he works with currently is someone who's been a very good Second Amendment advocate, but has never liked Trump. He's a harsh critic of Trump. So I think some of this may have reflected the influence of that individual who's honestly obsessed. Like, the problem with the criticism of Trump is so much of it comes from either people that got TDS, Trump derangement syndrome, or people that are so obsessively anti-Trump that you can't take credible their criticism. It doesn't come across as constructive criticism. It comes across as crazy criticism. And one of these people that Kyle works with, I think, is way over the top in his obsessive Trump hatred. But that probably may have bled into some of Kyle's understanding of some of the issues. But the reason I supported him, the reason I assume most donors supported him and people in the public supported him, is because they was a kid they were trying to put in prison for asserting his self-defense
It's
rights.
because he was innocent,
That's
not because
he
you
was
were going to
innocent.
agree with his.
You didn't, by donating to defending his innocence. They're trying to railroad a poor kid into prison to steal our self-defense rights. You didn't earn an entitlement to control his voice for the rest of his life, or the obligation. People sometimes get me confused with that. They think that, okay, I've contributed, someone's contributed something, or they're a member of our board or something else, or they super chat in, and they think suddenly I'm obligated to whatever viewpoint they have. That's not how this works. And so Kyle's a sweetheart of a kid trying to figure everything out. And along the way, we'll make all kinds of mistakes and miscues, just the nature of the animal, trying to figure out how to lend his voice to the court of public opinion now that he's become a public figure. But he's just a kid. And the way people handled it, I just found irresponsible from older adults. That if you disagree with him, engage in a constructive way, make a constructive argument. Don't make a destructive argument. It's like some people who come at me for being ever nice for saying good words about Robert Kennedy, because he's a good man with good ideas. That's why. And Nicole Shanahan is doing better work for raw milk than anybody in Trump world. Oh, there you go.
I want to pull up what was an actual fake Trump reply to Rittenhouse, which so it's so good just to be like a little bit skeptical and not fall for stupidity. But I'm sitting here talking with my wife. She's like, he's 21 years old. Lord knows if he's had a father figure, an older brother, someone to bounce off ideas with, so that you don't, as a kid, go out and do stupid tactical things. And he's 21, and not that he's like undeveloped. This is like you learn from mistakes, and there are better ways to make the point he was trying to make. And the mob, and I don't want to say the mob because I don't think it was everybody. There's just big names and big accounts jumping down his throat. And then when he does come around, it looks like he didn't come around for authentic reasons. It looks like he came around because he's catering to the mob, which is
I get people that think it's Trump or die. I get that, but make positive arguments for your position. That's a more persuasive mechanism than negative arguments. That the negative arguments, it's like people that, oh, you can't say anything nice about Kennedy because then somebody might vote for Kennedy and then Trump's going to lose and then the world's going to end. Okay, all right, I get it to a degree, but make the argument as to why Trump will make the difference on the issue that matters to whoever that voting group is.
Well,
negative arguments generally don't work in that context, from my experience, and I think they're just less persuasive than the other. They made a lot of Trump voters look cultish. That's what it did. You're willing to denounce a kid who was almost imprisoned to the victimization of the rest of us and loss of self-defense rights because because he said he wasn't going to vote for your favorite candidate, and you're willing to demonize him overnight. It wasn't just criticism, demonize him. That makes you look bad. Doesn't make Kyle Rittenhouse look bad. It makes you look bad.
Cancel and block. What I love is I don't want to pick on any.
But chill, bro.
I agree.
Dance or something.
Well, I agree, and ultimately Trump camp dealt with him the right way. Call him and say, "Look, we will be good." I know what he wanted to do, and he got the same result, but he got there a little bit of the hard way. Speaking of the hard way, hold on 1 second. There's nothing hard about this except
21-year-old go. That's not the. It's 21-year-old that do a lot dumber stuff. Let's put it that way.
Not likely a 4D chess move, but he did put the second back in Trump's radar. Just saying. So he failed forward at a minimum. Agreed. That's from a Nike 7. Grandpa's Place says, so if I donate, you're required to follow my instructions here. Spend my money. Raging says,
the people that he's working with need to quit putting pressure on him to endorse their version of the world. The person I'm talking about knows who I'm talking about. And I think he put pressure. I don't have personal information on this. I represented Kyle all the way through that process in the court of public opinion. Glad to do so. Did so pro bono. So there's no inside information here. But it's just reading the tea leaves from afar. There's people that have it. There was a prior person that was obsessed with controlling Kyle, and I think there's some people in Kyle's world that are also obsessed with controlling Kyle. They don't have to endorse your view either. Now, this person was very good at helping financially in other ways Kyle during key times of his defense. So I get it. But that doesn't entitle him to push his anti-Trump obsessive agenda. And I think he put too much pressure, just reading it from afar, on Kyle, to make public statements that agreed with his perspective, which I find loony. He's a great Second Amendment advocate, but his Trump hatred is insane. It's literally clinical.
I don't think I know who you're talking about, but I'll ask you after the show. Oh, cripe, hold on. Oh, and I was going to say, like, it's a tough thing, especially for a young kid who might not have
By the way,
proper.
that guy, if people were upset about Kyle's view, he deserved the criticism, not Kyle. Because, by the way, it was his account that shared the video, right? It wasn't Kyle's account that shared the video. It was his account that shared Kyle's video. So it's like, quit using your position Kyle benefits him now more than he benefits Kyle. And maybe he started to realize that, but don't coerce him to have your position on these kind of issues. And you know what? I'll do an open offer. Happy to have him on and debate Trump and the Second Amendment with him, because I agree with some of his criticisms, but they are way over the top. Trump still put on the Supreme Court the votes to restore Second Amendment freedom in the United States constitutionally, in a case we're about to get to.
Yep, and now I do know who you're talking about, because I did ask the question. This video was not.
He's got an unfortunate first name. It's like,
well,
I just you see that first name, you're like, I feel bad for him right away.
I'm going to go back and look, because I don't remember what the name was. I just remember seeing the video and it wasn't on Kyle's channel, his handle. I was like, oh, that's interesting, but I hadn't thought twice about it. And Kyle and everyone who gets in the public light, the toughest thing is finding out, making friends who are going to be looking out for your best interest and not looking for anything in return. It's a very tough journey to navigate. But speaking of someone who wants only good stuff in return, because I was eating the Wagyu Ghost before the show because I was a little bit tired and I couldn't have another caffeinated drink. So I ate the Wagyu Ghost biltong. Dude, my mouth was on fire. That's why I was drinking this freaking carbonated water. On fire in a good way. So King of Biltong. Good afternoon from Anton's. Free shipping for your biltong using code Viva. BiltongUSA.com. AntonUSA.com. Biltong is not taxed. Boycott the government. Buy biltong. Also help us move our store. It's freaking delicious. And the Wagyu Ghost, spicy as hell. Okay, the Second Amendment case. This was a judge begrudgingly striking down legislation that limits
commie judges that had to follow the Constitution. Whined about it all the way through, but I'll give
New Jersey.
At least they followed the Constitution, because some of these other Illinois, some other judges are refusing to do so. This judge at least recognized his obligation.
Well, and I'm comparing him with Judge Darkey in Dexter Taylor's case, where Judge Darkey says, don't bring your Second Amendment into this courtroom. There's no Second Amendment in New York State. This was New Jersey, not New York. And this judge, I'm reading it, I'm like, how the hell is this judge going to strike down the regulation? Because he said it was a victory. And I'm reading through, I was like, oh, this doesn't sound like it's a gun-loving judge. And he's like, the regulation limiting high-capacity magazines, I'd love to strike it down, but you can't do it. It doesn't fit any of the criteria. And so you'll flesh out the details, but this judge basically, being pulled and dragged the entire way, says, I want this to be the law. I want this regulation to pass. I want it to be applied, but it's unconstitutional and it can't be done this way. New Jersey, tell us what's going on.
So for a long time, they have an AR-15 ban as part of their assault weapons ban. It's always been unconstitutional. But this particular judge has been the one trying to stop it from being struck down. But then in the middle of this came Bruin. And he acknowledged that the AR-15, in the inimitable words of Alexander Ocasio-Cortez, is a commonly used weapon. Very common. Everybody knows it's used. So thanks for her contribution to our Second Amendment advocacy. Pointed out that it is commonly chosen for lawful purposes, especially self-defense. And given that it fits within that, the complete ban doesn't have any historical support. There's no history prior to, particularly the key times, our founding in 1865, whichever one you're applying under the circumstances, that there were complete bans on something commonly owned for self-defense. So correctly, the New Jersey AR-15 ban is bye-bye.
And just so people appreciate that the jurisprudential or the doctrinal, is that a word? The principle is that
it is
if it's doctrinal, so if it is the common firearm of choice, or if it's sufficiently common, then that is the threshold for determining what can and cannot be infringed upon. So like, I don't know what a grenade launcher is not the right example, but I don't know what type of firearm would be not sufficiently in common use. But so that is the relevance with that. She basically she satisfied the
Probably
legislation.
nuclear weapons.
Well, those are pretty prolific as well, Robert. It just depends on who you ask, who's got them. So, anyways, bottom line, New Jersey struck down. It was a regulation to limit high capacity magazines. It wasn't even. It was only like bringing it from 15 to 10, or what was it? It was bringing it from 18 to 10. I think still there's still a limit. I don't know how many rounds you can fit into any magazine just logistically, but so that's it. Second Amendment win because New Jersey respects the Second Amendment, but New York State doesn't yet. So we'll see.
You know who else doesn't respect it? The state of Minnesota. Though this isn't a gun case, it's a self-defense case.
Okay, so this is another one. I start reading this and I'm like, oh, dude's swinging a machete at two chicks and a guy on a train. I was like, how does Robert think this is a bad case? And then you read it and then you read beyond the headlines. So this is a case of a guy who gets on a train or wherever they are, they're on a train car or something. And he gets into an altercation with two women and a man. He walks by them. They don't like the way he looks and they say something to him. The other man at some point says, come off the camera footage here and I'm going to slit your throat. This is in a metro station or a train station. And the guy, for whatever the reason, I mean, I don't know. It seems like not guns are the weapon of choice. Is this in Minnesota?
Yep.
It was machetes. So this guy who just gets threatened by a guy who's brandishing the knife says, come away from the CCTV. I'm going to slit your throat. He pulls out his machete from his pants and for about a minute starts threatening them and saying, get away, F off, piss off, blah, blah, blah. And they got it on video, I guess.
It works. They decide, maybe, my knife, his machete. Okay, I might lose that bet.
Yeah, so he's like, oh, God, what was there? Was a video that a guy, they were in a knife fight and someone lost a hand in the fight. It's just disgusting. But so bottom line, like he's screaming at them, shouting at them expletives for a minute, and they scuttle off, and then he scuttles off. And then he gets charged with whatever, it's like assault for threatening bodily harm. And he gets convicted, Robert. And the rationale is he had a duty to retreat after the point where I guess the guy was no longer saying, I'm going to slit your throat, or they were sufficiently far away. And he had a duty to retreat. And because he didn't retreat within that 1 minute where I think this guy legit thought he was fighting for his life, not even fighting, but threatening for his own safety. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, that's crazy.
Absolutely. I mean, and what it is in my view, I took the Oregon case years ago, of someone who just showed a gun briefly when people were coming to attack him.
Mm-hmm.
My view, that's your Second Amendment rights. Second Amendment is not just a commonly used weapon for self-defense. It is self-defense itself. And in my view, there is a constitutional right to stand your ground. And there's a constitutional right that you do not have a duty to retreat under these circumstances. Historically in Minnesota, they'd only applied the duty to retreat when you caused actual physical harm and said, hey, you know what? Before you actually inflict harm on someone, you should see if you can retreat. That I don't agree with, but I understand. Now they're saying, oh, no, you always have a duty to retreat. You can't even brandish a weapon without trying to run as fast as you can first and seeing how that works. And that I find much deeper problematic. And so it to me, that actually violates the Second Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. This was the Supreme Court of the state of Minnesota that made this decision. So it's another state to avoid if you can.
I'm just like, they're running around with machete. The guy carries a machete for self-defense. I mean, what kind of world?
It might be a certain part of Minnesota, maybe a certain part of Minneapolis, certain congressman represents that part of Minnesota.
Now it's making a little, okay, possibly. Robert, any significance? Joe was in church during Assassination on a Saturday and was at Mount Airy Church in Philadelphia on Sunday before shooting, looking decrepit. Confession, perfect alibi. Right? Can you believe Nancy Pelosi's talking about? I don't know if it's serious. I don't know if she was joking. Putting frickin' Biden on Mount Rushmore. Hold on. It's a very, very new story. But then I approached.
What they're trying to do. They're trying to keep him on board with helping Kamala.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want him to just not care at all about Harris through Election Day.
Robert, this was from our locals community, and I need to give.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's amazing. I don't know if they took it from somewhere else, or I have to go back and see who gave this to us. I want to give full credit. I mean, I could not have done it myself. Okay, so that's good. Now let's get this out of here. What do we segue into? What do
Somebody
we
pointed out his
transition?
head. His head already is full of rocks, as somebody pointed
Yeah.
out.
I was going to say if they do it, they're going to have to call it like Mount Pato Pete. So it's like it's not something you want to do. Oh, what do we do? That we did Tina standing to. Oh, what do you segue into here?
So I mean, well, the a win against that other harassing agency usually involved with guns, but it's also known as alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. The right to make a homemade still in your own home.
I didn't read this case, but I can tell you from personal experience, we've got similar laws up in Canada. And my brother-in-law, who was at one time working with a company called La Chaufferie, it means the distiller. It's like, the Chaufferie is the boiler room, because it was in the old boiler room, I think, of a big company. And yeah, it was called La Chaufferie. It no longer exists because freaking liquor commission basically puts them out of business. So where is this? You can now distill your own hard alcohol in America, or only a specific
America.
state?
In America. So the law that this was the federal government's excuse. So for those that don't know, if you try to make alcohol in your own home, the federal government makes it a federal crime to do so. Federal crime to have a still in your own home.
Well, Robert, let me stop you there just for 1 second. The rationale is that in the stilling process, when you start distilling the alcohol, there's a period of time where the alcohol that is produced is the poisonous alcohol. I forget if it's ethyl versus methyl. And you have to boil off the toxic alcohol before you can get to the drinkable, the sweet, juicy, drinkable alcohol. And there's also risks of explosion. So there were legit reasons.
That's not the grounds for the federal law. None of those are safety, none of that. Now,
then it has to be with taxation.
Well, the reason is the federal government doesn't have that power. That's a local government choice. Whether the local government or county, city, or state is concerned with safety hazards of having a still. East Tennessee had some of the greatest stills of all time, homemade out in the mountains and the hills and the hollers. And then the revenuers, as they were then called from the Internal Revenue Service, come and harass everybody. They want to, we still sing about it, University of Tennessee football games, that when you sing about Rocky Top, the part of the song is about where you drink your corn from a jar, as it goes. So, but the federal law makes it a crime to do this. And so it's like, what's their legal authority? They cited 3 clauses. They said, this is just taxing. This is just our taxation clause. Of course, there's a problem. This is a crime to even have it. It has nothing to do with taxes. It has nothing to do with even collecting revenue. Well, they said, well, if it isn't taxing, it's the necessary and proper clause to enforce our other tax regime. And problem there, of course, is how can it be necessary and proper to tax when you're not actually taxing anything, when there's no actual revenue from this law? And then they said, well, okay, it's the Commerce Clause. It's the Interstate Commerce Clause. And we regulate alcohol across the country. And this was the excuse to regulate purely local activity, right? This is how you're a wheat farmer and you're making wheat for your own family. And the federal government says we can prohibit you from doing so because it impacts interstate commerce. So the rule is you can regulate under interstate commerce as long as it substantially affects interstate commerce and you have a comprehensive regime dealing with production and distribution, dealing with supply and demand, trying to actually nationally control the volume on the market. The problem is federal liquor laws have never done that. Federal liquor laws have never been about regulating production, distribution, market size, supply, demand, any of it. They don't care about volume. They care about other things. And so the problem was this didn't substantially affect interstate commerce that is systematically governed of the marketplace by federal law. So to the great credit of the federal judge, he's like, this doesn't meet the taxing clause. The taxing clause is not the right to control everybody's behavior forever because something they might do somewhere down the road might impact revenue. It's got to directly impact revenue. It's not necessary and proper if it's neither necessary nor proper. And last but not least, it's not interstate commerce if it doesn't even substantially affect interstate commerce and there's not even a systemic effort to govern the marketplace for home-stilled liquor across the country or any liquor across the country. So he said, federal law making it a crime. This is my favorite phrase. What they tried to do, he said, was Congress was trying to ferment a crime without
Oh, God.
constitutional predicate.
You could see that judge just snickering. So it's like, that's a damn good one. Oh, well, that's great. I mean, I'm not going to do it, but good to know a little bit more freedom. What was I going to say about distilling your own alcohol? Anyhow, you have to know what you're doing before you do it. So don't everybody jump into
Don't you have a
the
relative that
business.
makes gin or something?
Yeah, my brother-in-law, and he had I drank some of his homemade stuff, and I was scared, but that's only because I don't, I have no idea what's going on, and tasted great. He made
By the way,
he made some good.
never drink Chinese wine unless you're ready for it. It's basically moonshine in disguise. It's not Chinese wine. Made the mistake of ordering it at a Chinese restaurant, ordered a whole bottle of it, and it's all the local Chinese were one of the great R&G Lounge, great place in San Francisco, one of the best Chinese food places in America. And I saw the local Chinese were snickering, and I was like, "Oh, okay, I'm in for something." And you poured a glass. I was like, "Holy moly, that was like Tennessee moonshine." But I was not going to let them just snicker. I was like, "I got to drink the whole thing now. I can't order it and look like I'm some kind of wuss that didn't know what I was doing, which I didn't." But just word of the wise, unless you want moonshine, Chinese wine is moonshine.
So it is like strong percentage. It's not 14%.
Oh, that's an understatement.
Well, now I kind of want to taste some. I'm gonna go find me some Chinese wine. I'm going back to our list here. Which one do we go to? Homestead.
Well, we've got so many. But why don't we transgress? Well, transgress might be the wrong word. Transition into to where Biden is transgressing on the border wall, and that will transition into some of Biden's other things and all the election integrity cases that came down this week.
Before we do that, let's throw one in there that wasn't on the list. Are you following the business with Iman Khalif, the boxer, and the issue?
I feel like an idiot. I don't know why I didn't bet on it. I was like, it's so obvious. Like people were on sportspicks.locals.com where I got a discount. You can get half off an annual subscription through tomorrow at sportspicks.locals.com. You just have to put in the discount code, all caps, football, in honor of European and American football soon to commence, plus political betting, predictions, and prognostications that are up. We'll be on Monday with Richard Barris on what are the odds to break down a whole bunch of stuff taking place on the election betting and election fronts. But remind me what you were asking about.
Oh no, the betting of the boxer,
I should have bet on the boxer. I always bet on the man to beat the woman. It reminds me of the line from Naked Gun, where they ask him about why he bet the way he did, Leslie Nielsen's character, and he goes, "I just know never bet on the white guy." In a boxing match between a man and a woman, always bet on the man. Now it's going to be two men fighting for gold and silver in the Olympics women's boxing match.
This is the issue now, because at first
you've seen the South Park episode of this, right? They predicted this 8 years ago.
Yeah. Well, the thing about this is, I want to say the nuance to this is that when the story first breaks, and they're saying it's a man fighting a woman, and I'm like, well, is this one of those medical anomaly cases, or is this a man who was born a man? I don't know how we'll do it anymore, but who identifies? Is it a trans issue or is it a medical fairness issue? And so now it seems that it's more of a medical fairness issue in that Iman Khalif was born with female genitalia, although there is some debate about that. But that she's a she, I guess, in the sense that visibly no one would know the difference naked, but then you see some photos and you're not so sure. But Khalif has XY chromosomes, and I think that's why
is normally known as man,
being a man. But then people think, well, born with female genitalia but has XY chromosomes. Like, okay, so this is one of those 1 in a million. I don't know if it's intersex. I think it's DSD, like developmental sexual disorder, where the person is born with a vagina, but there is some debate, but let's just say a vagina-ish parts, but goes through a development that is more in line with XY chromosomes, meaning testosterone and other stuff. And so it's a question of medical fairness, not trans ideology, which is why I think this entire discussion got derailed. Someone who's not a doctor sent me, it says basically the Olympics didn't want to redefine gender standards and errs on the side of inclusion, such that XY females with elevated testosterone can apparently qualify as women.
But here's the thing: it's like they would ban somebody for doing certain kinds of things to their body with chemicals to create the same effect. So how does that make any sense? That just doesn't make. It's like those old East German shot putters, women. You're like, whoa, I'm not sure there's still women anymore. But I mean, they are like, really ripped. I mean, if it's about having women's competition with people who are not, whether it's biologically created or created by doing something to their bodies, have an advantage that is an unfair advantage given the circuit. And someone with XY chromosomes has an unfair advantage in boxing.
Oh no,
they might not have an advantage in the pole jump, but they have an advantage in boxing.
Well, no, but the issue was I try to think of the other. Let's just say there was a woman, XX chromosome, born with a vagina, like no question, but had very elevated levels of testosterone for whatever the reason, not drug induced. There, I can see it like Sagittarius, the horse, had a bigger heart than other horses. For that decade of Sagittarius will conquer. This is an XY, so I think there's a medical issue here. I don't necessarily sure I trust the passport out of Algeria, but that's a second, or any certain countries, that's a separate issue. But this was actually my question, so I think we agree on this as well. But when they say that she's or someone is a -150 favorite, what does that mean in terms of if you bet
favorite? So if you think it means you have to bet $150 to win 100. So if it's minus, that's how much you have to bet to win 100. If it's plus, that's how much you win if you bet 100. So So what that translates into is they said 60% chance that she would win.
Oh,
so if you think the chances, and what does that mean? It means if she won 60% of the time, you would break even. If she won more than 60% of the time, he, she, whatever, always reminds me of a court case, by the way. But there was someone who had also gone through some sort of transition and used to be one gender, and it looked like Pat from Saturday Night Live. And there was a federal judge who brought us up to the sidebar and said, "What do we call it?" I was like, "I don't think that's politically correct, Judge." But I was like, "Just first name, I think, Judge. Like, let's stick with the first name. Can't get wrong there. Last name, something. But skip the Mr. and Miss and Mrs. Don't want to mess around with that at all." But so that's what that means. But I mean, let's be honest, it was a 95% chance they would win.
Yeah.
So if I would have known that was a man up there boxing, I would have bet on the man. But it turns out domestic violence is now an Olympic sport.
You bet 150. If it's -150, you bet 150 to win 100. And here Occupant says she has internal testicles. I genuinely feel sorry for her, but she has male bone and musculature. I mean, you look at a picture, it says she should be allowed to compete in the men's division. Yeah. The other question was this. Another place where I have a bet currently pending. Do you think Kamala Harris, if she gets to be officially the nominee, because I'm still
she already is.
So I lost my bet on that. Mother effer. That's where I was right on Biden, but I thought they would not take Kamala. I thought it was going to be Gavin. Does she pick Shapiro or does she pick Waltz?
I'm hoping she picks Shapiro because that would highlight what's been happening in Pennsylvania the last 2 years. We'll get to an Amos Miller update. I have a big hearing before the Commonwealth Court on Wednesday with the latest government effort to try to shut down Amos Miller, the Amish farmer of Pennsylvania.
Well, I'm hoping that she picks Waltz because there's a number of reasons, but primarily I bought in Waltz at 10 cents. So I'm and dude, look, I'll put it on blast anyhow. You got George Soros chummy with what's his face, Josh Shapiro. It'll do wonders for anti-Semitism to have Josh Shapiro as the VP. With his ties to George Soros, both of them making ominous predictions about Donald Trump. Go to Pennsylvania, he nearly gets killed there. Alex Soros, sorry.
Now you couldn't be critical of the ticket without being racist, sexist, anti-Semitic, and ableist.
Oh no, well, yeah.
You heard about how Michael Malice explained why it's ableist, right?
Yes, but I had that joke before he said it. I didn't hear that he said it on Rogan, but I didn't want to. Yeah, he said she's. That was my joke. Like it's ableist because she's. I didn't say the retarded part, but he said it. No, but I already said she already had the anti-Semitic angle because her husband's Jewish, so you can't criticize. It's just terrible. It's all terrible. All right, so we'll do a couple more and then we're going to end. Then we'll end on.
Well, we got
Rumble.
a bunch of election cases. The FCC net neutrality rule went into court. Crypto and banks, and the border wall.
So okay,
And
let's
Russian prisoners, the Russian prisoner swap.
let's do that right now because I don't know. I don't know enough about that. I only know that Biden got his only zinger on Trump, but I suspect there might be something inaccurate about it. Where Trump said, "I would have gotten those two prisoners out for a better exchange," and then Biden walks out and is like, "Oh, wait, my earpiece just kicked in. Then why didn't you do it when you were president?" Who were the people, and why didn't Trump do it when he was president?
Do what?
Get the prisoner swap in exchange for that
Yeah.
journalist.
Well, because most of them weren't prisoners while Trump was president.
I knew it. I see. I just if I incapable of telling the truth. Okay, I knew it. I just didn't know to say it publicly. Okay.
So yeah,
So
I mean,
what's up?
Putin probably got the benefit of that, the better end of that swap. That was one of them was a journalist that Tucker Carlson asked Putin about releasing and Putin said, well, subject to negotiation. So so maybe Tucker had some benefit there. I have some doubts that journalist is just a journalist. There's already stories starting to come out that maybe something more was going on there, but it was a beneficial swap to Putin. That he got some good assassins back and things like that. But still, my favorite part was Joe Biden trying to climb the plane back to Russia. Maybe he was trying to escape. He's like, I gotta get out of this crazy Kamala. I gotta get out of here. Go join Putin. Or maybe he thought he was the person being swapped, whatever it was. But the smart swap by Putin, who I mean is still the best swap of all time, will be trading a
The
WNBA
merchant.
player for the Lord of War, for literally
The
the
mer-
guy known as the Lord of War.
Was he the Lord, the Merchant of Death is who
Yes,
what that guy's
yes, he's the merchant
for
of death.
Brittany Griner, people. That's
For Brittany
um
Griner, a lesbo WNBA player. I mean, that had to be the greatest trade in the history of trades for Putin. What he pulled off there.
all right, what else? Hold
I
on.
wonder where that meme came from of Putin riding a bear, but it seems apt.
Let me go see this. I got distracted by the dogs in our Viva Barnes Law.locals.com community. Okay, hold on. There was one more that we should do. Well, okay, what was the other one?
There's
That we have
all
to
the
deal with here?
election cases that we should cover.
Oh, okay. We'll do those and then we'll end. But let me do one, actually, the Canadian one that's in the title of this video, the Coots 4. So you know the story, Robert. I mean, I've talked about it, but these are the Coots, the four Coots men, Coots, Alberta, arrested on conspiracy to commit murder, kept in pretrial detention for over 2 years. Two of them were given, I don't want to swear, but they were given plea deals. They agreed to plea deals, which reduced their charges to absolutely nothing. Dropped the conspiracy to commit murder. Whether or not they agreed to statements of fact in their plea deals that threw the other two under the bus, that was my concern at the time. The other two, Oleanek, and I'm going to forget the other guy's name, obviously, because I'm senile. Bottom line, the two remaining four of the Coots 4, the men charged with conspiracy to murder an RCMP officer, they were obviously found not guilty on the murder charges. I mean, obviously, because I mean, the thing is, it's found not guilty, but people will still think they must have done something bad enough to warrant it. It's a political prisoners from day one. Not guilty conspiracy to commit murder, Anthony Oleanek. Guilty possession of weapons for dangerous purposes. I don't know the details of this yet, so I'm either going to get Jason Levine or Gordon McGill or one of the two men if I can on next week. Mischief over $5,000, which is nothing. I mean, it's like, I don't know, knocking over a statue. Not even, because that's worse. Possession of explosives for a dangerous purpose. And then Chris Carbert, conspiracy to commit murder, not guilty. And then other bullshit charges. So they got off on the biggest charge, which was a total political hit job from day one. From what I understand, if their sentence is likely going to be time served because they did 2 years in remand, some of it in solitary. So it's just political prisoners, absolute abuse, and those are the victims of Justin Trudeau's Canada. And there was outright corruption in the evidence that was not disclosed, in the manner in which they went about this, the manner in which they were charged, detained. Just terrible, terrible. But a little bit of white pill, I guess, if you want to call it that. Okay, the election stuff. You go, take it away.
Yeah. So we got voting rights, ballots as a public record, voter registration. And we'll save the border wall, crypto, and suing banks over Ponzi schemes, and the FCC net neutrality for the after party at vivabarneslaw.locals.com. So the I was interesting. I was watching Alison Morrow interview Eric Hunley and her husband after they took a little trip up to where the assassination took place.
Mhm.
And her husband's got it down right. Hunley's still got to work on it, but you got to get the .locals.com right. So like the big the 24-hour discount opportunity at SportsPicks is sportspicks.locals.com. Right, that's how it works. So we got some big election cases that came down. The first one is out of the state of Pennsylvania. So people had been trying to get a copy of what Ratburger down there in Georgia publicly promised they would get when he wrote that big fat check to Dominion, which was that they would print and publish all the ballots, which Ratburger still hasn't done down there in Georgia, contrary to his public promise. Similarly, in Pennsylvania, in Erie County, they were refusing to produce copies of the actual ballots, even though the ballots have now digital images, so they're easy to produce under Pennsylvania's version of the Freedom of Information Act, or Open Records Act, or Sunshine Law, depending on what state you're in. Theirs is the Right to Know law. I used it to find out at, as we'll discuss also in the after party, the Amos Miller case, that the state of Pennsylvania had been conspiring to shut down Amos Miller for more than a decade. So they used the Right to Know law saying, we want to see the actual ballots, the digital copies of the ballots. Get this. They pretended the ballots weren't digital copies of ballots, but they were part of the voting machine. And that because they're part of the voting machine, that was excluded and exempt under the law. Because the concern was they didn't want software to have to be disclosed under the Right to Know laws. So fortunately, the Commonwealth Court of Pennsylvania, where I will be in front of this Wednesday for Amos Miller, that has otherwise not always been a reliable ally of legal integrity in the state of Pennsylvania, correctly ruled that this is a complete violation of the Right to Know laws, that in fact, all the ballots are public records as is specifically required under plain language of the text of Pennsylvania statutes. So now you're going to be entitled in Pennsylvania to see the ballots, to see the ballot envelopes that they came in. So what that would allow you to do is to better enforce election integrity in a state that's considered maybe the tipping state for the 2024 election. So big win there for election integrity advocates there in Pennsylvania.
I'm still thinking, Robert, if she actually appoints as VP the governor of the state in which this disastrous assassination attempt occurred, I mean, it would actually be the deep state laughing in your face, or at least demoralizing you one last time.
This is a guy who bragged while attorney general before he was governor of the state of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, that he guaranteed Pennsylvania was going to go for Biden.
Mhm.
How? I would say by not enforcing election integrity laws in Pennsylvania. The governor of Pennsylvania is the guy that is trying to shut down Amish farmer Amos Miller from being able to sell his food anywhere in the world. That he, in fact, currently is trying to order him to destroy food so that he can't even, his own farmed food, he can't even feed his own family, can't even feed his own animals. That's who Governor Shapiro is. Governor Shapiro is the guy whose administration illegally imprisoned farm workers. You can research it. Wentworth and her for 30 days of cases they were never even charged with a crime for. Governor Shapiro is the guy who has covered up sexual harassment scandals, covered up murders. He covered up potential money laundering involving the teachers union. So there'll be a lot of fun topics and I hope Harris pick Shapiro to be her VP choice. That will
I hope
finally
she doesn't.
get the national attention they deserve.
Well, what do you make of what happened last week with the mayor of Pennsylvania releasing that video saying, we support Kamala as president and VP Josh Shapiro? I mean,
they released it early, but because she's already made her choice. And there's within the Democratic Party, they're angling some of the people that don't want him to be there. Pete Booty Gay is busy trying to preclude. He wants to be on the ticket. There's other people that want to be on the ticket. and they want to exclude Shapiro. And the Shapiro has some adversaries right there in the state of Pennsylvania.
Because it is,
But
it's amazing.
a
Like,
lot of this attention will only happen if he's put on the ticket. So I want him on the
And-
ticket.
and you think leaking that video, because it could have been a leak, or it could have just been there could have been, what's the word when you lobby? It could have been them lobbying.
Conclusion, yes.
Well, yeah, they're certainly persuading, but I could have seen it as been them being lobbying it. Oh, and then I could see, like, maybe Kamala wants to test the water and see what the reaction is. And now that she sees what the reaction is, better pick somebody else. Because in addition to the sex scandals and all the other stuff, now they dug up a 30-year-old essay that he wrote where he basically said Palestinians are not looking for peace. And that might not be the best way to win over the votes.
Even though I know Democrats are worried about the Muslim vote, that by Richard Barris's polls, they need to be more worried about the Jewish vote. So there's a lot more Jewish voters than there are Muslim voters, including in the only states Muslim voters exist in any meaningful number: New Jersey, New York, Michigan, and Minnesota. There's more Jewish voters in each of those states. So if I were them, I'd worry about the Jewish vote.
Oh God, this is good. I think, I mean, look, I'm the reasonable one. The pandering, to do that, to pander to the Jewish vote, it will make me angry, and it will exacerbate a great many anti-Semitic stereotypes and sentiments out in the world right there. But all right, I might be one of them self-hating. All right, sorry.
But speaking of elections, the next big case is concerning the Biden administration, which has basically issued an executive order to enlist all federal agencies in a massive get out the vote effort targeting Democratic voting demographics and mail-in voting to basically force them enforce state governments to make sure that they get everybody registered that's a potential Democrat and make sure they have ease of mail-in voting. And the Ninth Circuit, which had previously properly ruled that the state could require citizenship as a condition of registration, went and reversed itself in a panic move. And this is all coming from the Biden administration. Well, now a bunch of attorney general have sued the Biden administration, saying this is a complete usurpation of state power, the elections clause governing, and a usurpation of congressional power. So the elections clause for the presidency gives to states exclusively the means and method of governing a presidential election. The only place for the federal government at all is in governing the elections is concerning elections for Congress. But there, that power is only given to Congress, not to the president. The president didn't even cite any laws for the basis of this legislation. So it's a usurpation, violation of the elections clause, usurpation of states' prerogatives and legislative power and the separation of powers. And so hopefully it's a suit that will win and put a stop to the Biden administration's effort to weaponize the entire federal government to maximize Democratic turnout. Now that Zuckerbucks is off the table.
Well,
Zuckerberg has come out and said, I'm going to stay out of 2024 after all the disaster of 2020.
Although some people are saying he's not, by having come out and actually complimented Trump after the
he went further than that. He called Trump and told him that the Facebook censorship that was occurring was a mistake and he was going to put a stop to it, and that he was staying out of 2024, period.
I saw a tweet. I didn't read any article, and I don't know if it's true, that there's talk of going after Elon Musk for election violation or FEC violations for starting
that's
a PAC.
Not a confession through projection, because that's the entire media and Google and everybody else. That's what an election interference is. That's what illicit illegal campaign contributions are, what they've been up to. So they couldn't try to set a precedent against Musk without destroying themselves in the process. So that's going to get nowhere fast. But in the last part of the voting issues, voting rights and redistricting before the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. For a while, the Voting Rights Act had been construed so that you could stack minority groups. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 was designed to make sure that all the poll taxes and grandfather clauses and other provisions used to keep black voters from voting in the South ended. It specifically said it was not to guarantee proportionate representation. That's right in the statute itself. It also said it was concerned with a racial group, not let's stack racial groups together. So, but what started to happen was the Fifth Circuit some years ago allowed you to stack groups together. So normally, in order to show, hey, we're getting screwed, you can say we're geographically compact, we're politically cohesive, we're a minority group, and we're underrepresented because we normally would have had representation and they treated us equally, right? So, but what was happening in a lot of jurisdictions, they didn't have that. So they said, well, if you combine this racial group with this racial group with this racial group, then we would have a district. And there are courts saying, yeah, you're right, and forcing these districts that basically just guaranteed Democratic representation as well as really bottom line. Democratic Party representation, capital D, not little d. Fifth Circuit en banc finally reversed all that nonsense. Said that's never been what the statute says. It's contra the entire purpose of the statute, and you can't stack groups in order to create a Voting Rights Act claim anymore. So big win and better because it was never supposed to be proportionate representation, and that's where it was trending in favor of.
All right, awesome. Let me bring up, there was one or two more super chats that Rumble rants. Alex Davy Duke says, just a little bit of support and a little more. Thank you, Davy Duke. We met in Toronto. Let's do it. Let's go over to locals. It's going to be the supporters only because that's the way this is fine-tuned in Rumble Studio. Let me see. I'm going to get a bunch of the, let me bring it up here. I think I'll get as many of the $5 plus as I can before we go over there. Let me see here. Oh my gosh, load messages. Okay. All right. Am I at the top yet? Oh, no, hold on. That's why, because I'm in the chat and not, you know what? I'll go from the bottom up just to do a few of these. AM Drum. I volunteer for a nonprofit. I am learning now about the CTA, Corporate Transparency Act. Hopefully in the near future, you can talk about the constitutionality of this act. All members of our board must share personal information or suffer a hefty fine. Blue CW Soldier 3. Remember the Brown Bess, the musket used by the British Army for over a century, was the AR-15 of its day. It was perfectly legal for private citizens to own and possess in its day. It was capable of 3 to 5 inaccurate shots per minute, and it even had a bayonet lug, which is hated by the anti-gunners for some reason. The AR is exactly what the founding fathers had in mind when they wrote the Constitution. I was talking about this with my kid. Muskets and, like loading them up and how you have to load them. Then we bought a musket at Harper's Ferry, like carved out of wood, and then we tied on a dinner knife to the end of it to make a bayonet out of it. Von Cobra, $10 says, my lord, please let the ATF challenge this up to the Supreme Court. Overturning Chevron was good. If we can get Wickard versus Filburn overturned, that would be so much better. Denise Ann 2, Ash Epp and Brian Lupo are also covering the Tina Peters trial. You can watch on Rumble on both CanCon and My America. They have been following this since Tina's office was raided. $5 from Blue CW Soldier. Saw that Sports Picks is doing half off until tomorrow. I am thinking of trying to enter the world of political betting. We will see if I'm any good at it. We'll see if I'm willing to try to.
Since I'm political bets, over 2,000 political bets, sports and political bets over the course of a year. Less than $1 a day. Right now, discount code, all caps, football, sportspicks.locals.com. You get, really, when you add in the discount, it's more than half off for the annual subscription. Best deal in all of sports and political betting. We'll have lots of political bet recommendations throughout the rest of the election season. And we're about to commence all the football bets. We put out over 50 bets every week. Probably put out about 100 bets recommended each week on average. Best value anywhere in sports and political betting. Sportspicks.locals.com. Do we have Ethan yet on Viva Barnes?
I'll get it. I'll get him in here. He was a little he wasn't in the best of moods today. So we were fishing today, and we ran into a fan on the Glades. But yeah,
they're like run into the fan, right? You know, like
no. We're there. Like, I think I know you from the internet. And it was good. Yesterday I ran into one also.
Fan, not.
Yes.
When you say when you see Glades, I think of those fans.
No, a member of the community. Boomin' Vroomin says $5. WinRed does the same thing. I had the woman on. Her name was Mel. She gave the instructions on how the FEC.gov, see if your name is dead. This is talking about using your name to vote for people. I found it looked like I made donations every single day in 2022 for small amounts, sometimes several per day. Donations went to WinRed, FEC, and a specific race. I told James several months ago, and he thanked me. Still have the email. And then we got free SCO1, $10. No reporting on the massive U.S. military buildup in the Philippines regarding the ownership of the second Thomas Shoal. China claims ownership. Philippines half sank a Navy vessel. in the ownerships. This will be our Gulf of Tonkin incident to go to war with China. Barnes, your thoughts? I hope you're wrong.
I hope
Um,
so. Let's
all
not
right.
cover all the continents with war.
Let us end now on Rumble. Everybody, the entire stream will be up on, well, everybody knows what's going on here. Viva Barnes Law. Let me just go give the link one more time, see how many people we can get over from Rumble, and then we're going to end the party over there with a little locals exclusive. Here it is. And now we are ending and going exclusive to Rumble locals supporters only. Boom. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, now I was on here. Plant Nerd said $5. Me, are you Amish or Mennonite? What's the difference? Him, I'm Amish. We believe in marriage. They believe in a Mennonite. Bada bing, bada boom. $5 from Real Super Happy. Today's my birthday. My favorite rugby team is the New England Free Jacks. Just won the championship, and now I get to listen to you. That sounds like a damn good day. Russell Real Super Happy. Jonathan G94. Will Netanyahu get his long sought for dream of a war with Iran? There's a lot of noise in the Middle East, and the two of Alex's on the Duran seem to think it's going in that direction. The Russians are arming the Iranians as well. Robert, what do you say?
Hope not.
Then we got Susie C asking with the tip again. Wisconsin and Pennsylvania do not start counting provisional ballots until after election is over. What laws or procedures have been put in place to mitigate cheating?
It varies by each jurisdiction, but it helps that at least we'll now get access to audit the ballots by getting the copies of the ballots themselves now that they've been declared public records beyond any dispute, question, or controversy in Pennsylvania.
I'm going to pull this up here based on this chat, but we got Chrissy79 says, thank you, Robert and David, for all you do. Please keep Ireland in your thoughts and prayers. It's full steam ahead with the agenda of the cabal, unfortunately. The citizens have no say, even according to our high court in Dublin. The illegals have human rights, but the natives don't, apparently. I haven't listened to the speech from the new guy who just got elected in England, but he's talking about far-right thuggery, even though from what I understood it was...
basically
Oh, no, I mean that... And the thing is, I'm also listening...
because the Tories were imploded.
Oh, yeah. No, but I'm listening to Jack Posobiec's Unhumans, and he's talking about how in communist regimes they criminalize self-defense and defend the criminals. And that guy, I didn't hear the speech yet, but he's talking about the far-right thuggery in England. I'm like, dude, it was two white right men who were stabbed and beaten with hammers by a mob. I'm like, this is communism. Period. Like, there's no other way to look at it. Schnookums, I understand California now flies tourists allows tourists to fly without visas. A lot of East Indians coming in to go south. Then we got All Good Guy says, Viva, the Apple TV app needs to be updated to use a keyboard. I can read the chat, but no text. Okay, I'm going to see what I can send that to the team. And a lot of these I brought. Stay safe from South Carolina. We are preparing for historic flooding from TS Debbie, Tropical Storm Debbie. That is from Concert Chick. Yeah, we're expecting something down here as well. So, Viva, where was this is from Schnookums. Was there some change to Canadian law or outlook to facilitate? Oh, I got that one, and I think I got them all. I hope I didn't miss any. If I missed any people, I'm sorry. I please accept my apologies. Viva, get Jay Dyer on the show. He hosts the 4th hour of InfoWars, and that is from Lying in State. And that's it. Robert, what do we have left?
So first up on the border wall, the final judgment that the Biden's effort to divert funds intended for the border wall has been ruled illegal outside of his authority. And so those funds can now only go to the border wall, and the various buoys being placed in the river has been affirmed recently. So, two good wins against the Biden administration on immigration by the state of Texas.
Are they going to argue, is the Biden administration going to say we only lost because we stopped contesting the appeal or the injunction? No, it was an injunction. They lost in the injunction and then they just abandoned the case, right? So it's not really a loss.
Well, it was a final judgment. They weren't able to ever win the case. I mean, they were always going to lose it because what they were doing was illicit. They just bought time to allow a flood of immigrants across the country.
Oh, yeah. Immigrants that will have an impact on the not on the census, on what's the word?
Well, yeah, on the census, which leads to apportionment, which determines representation, which determines electoral votes. So, the Elon Musk has done a good job highlighting that aspect. Then we've got net neutrality. Always been. What do you know about net neutrality?
Well, I don't know. I see this. I remember the term from back before I was politically aware, and I'm reading the decision that you gave, which was what agency is it? Not what agency was trying to regulate the internet and declare it a utility?
The FCC.
The FCC. Sorry. So yeah, I'm getting up FCC and the FEC. So I never fully understood what net neutrality meant. I thought it meant like you can't throttle or suppress based on viewpoints or substance. And reading the reading material you sent, where the FCC is saying like we want to declare internet a utility so that it's governed by a whole different set of rules. And I'm like, that's what I thought we wanted to get around Section 230, and the courts say no, you don't get to do that. So I don't understand the nuances exactly of like the different rules that would apply if the FCC gets to label it a utility, but they don't.
It's always been tricky because there was originally a legitimate sort of little d democratic concern for open internet, for broadband access to be more accessible, for not giving these private monopolies a cartel control over access to information. But then there was another incentive that became quite clear, and the reason why many people on the right became concerned with net neutrality was it looked like the Obama administration wanted to use it as a cover, as a fig leaf, as a pretext to shift power from private corporations to the government for being the gatekeeper of the internet. And a lot of people were not interested in that option. And so the Trump administration reversed those rules. The Biden administration belatedly has come back in and said, let's restore those rules. And the question is, were they doing it because of the anti-monopoly side, or are they doing it because they want control and to be the gatekeeper themselves? The court ultimately said it's not up to the FCC anymore to make that determination. Supreme Court said if it's a major question, and who gatekeeps the internet, it's clearly a major question, Congress has got to make that determination, not the FCC. And I think that's a correct ruling, is it should be subject to congressional legislation, not FCC regulation. So for now, net neutrality is dead.
I have to go make sure. I totally appreciate. I don't appreciate what net neutrality means, its impact. But anyhow, all right. Was there anything else?
Yeah. And then when can you sue a bank for facilitating fraud?
I'm going to say never.
I don't know. Excuse. The usual excuse is we're just doing regular services. But so there were some crypto operators who were running a Ponzi. They said, hey, invest and make money on our ability to invest and trade in crypto. People sent them money, and then they just sent money back to their initial investors, early investors, pocketed the rest, some offshore accounts that disappeared. Classic Ponzi. Part of their pitch was, hey, the contract doesn't become binding until you give the money to this very well-respected, well-established bank. And this bank publicly states how all the due diligence they do to make sure that their services are never used to promote money laundering or fraud or illicit activity. So you can be confident that this bank has effectively vetted us and that your contract is not binding until the bank accepts your deposit. And so when these people got scammed and some of the money they could no longer recover, they sued some of the big banks. And the big banks were like, you can't sue us for just being a bank. Yeah, maybe we accepted deposits and we allowed transfer of money, but we were just providing a utility service. We weren't involved. But the allegations were that they knew what they were doing, that they facilitated it deliberately and intentionally, helping the fraudsters get away with it, helping the fraudsters solicit the money, helping the fraudsters transfer it to places they knew the money wasn't supposed to go because it was being used by their bank accounts to do it. And to the credit of the court said, look, when there's an allegation that you knew what was going on, saying you're just a bank is no longer a plausible excuse. That's aiding and abetting the breach of fiduciary duty. So you don't have to show the level of intentionality that might go with a conspiracy, but if you knew that your services were being used to promote a fraud scheme, then you are aiding and abetting it when you allow it to be done and do nothing to correct it or remedy it under state securities laws and other analogous tort provisions. I helped establish this against a law firm in California years ago that you can sue a law firm for aiding and abetting somebody else's fraud of the lawyer's client when the lawyer knows what they're doing and is doing it deliberately and intentionally beyond their duties of zealous advocacy to their client. And it's, if a lawyer can get sued, why can't a bank get sued? I mean, the lawyer can say, well, I was just drafting a contract. And as a lawyer, I just draft contracts. If I know that I'm drafting the contract for the purposes of helping someone steal from somebody else and get away with it, then that's a very different animal. And credit to the court for finally starting to holding banks accountable, because almost no massive criminality could occur anywhere in the world without the banks often knowing intentional complicity. There never would have been an Epstein scandal without the banks protecting and promoting Epstein.
Did you flip the decision to Mark Elias?
I should.
Bada bing, bada boom. All right, Robert, and here in the chat, we got Free SCO1 says, I am with Rittenhouse. Ron Paul, George Gammon, 2024. Too late for that, but 2028. LOL, seriously, if Kyle's brief protest of Trump sways Trump to a more constitutional side, then I am all for it. And I think everybody agrees with that. Victor Cardone, thanks for the update. And then we got Stingway. Doesn't the census come up again during next presidential term? Would Trump have another chance to get citizenship on it again? That's
potentially,
from Stingway.
yeah, potentially before the 2030 census, yeah.
Okay, that does it. We've done everything. We've done it all. It's fantastic. I was going to say this. So you're on with Richard Barris tomorrow.
Yeah, what are the odds? Richard Barris, People's Pundit, daily, 2 p.m. Eastern time.
I might be on a 2-night overnighter. Robert, we had a daughter's birthday party today. It's a little late, but there were like 7 or 8 girls making slime around the house. And I'm like, I got to get the hell out of here. So I took 5 of the other. I took my other 2 kids and their friends, 5 people, 4 people. We went fishing, which was not much more relaxing. A big gator came up and took a little chomp at my GoPro when I was, putting it in the water to try to get a video. So it's been a long, stressful day, and I'm sure the house is a bloody mess. So we're going to go look at that. But this week coming up, I don't know what I've got, but I'll be around, so you'll see me. I will start a schedule when the kids go back to school. I'll start a schedule when the kids go back to school.
When do they go back to school there in Florida?
I don't remember, but it's early. It's like 2 weeks earlier. I think I want to say the second week of August. It's like 2 weeks earlier than the rest
next week.
Yeah, and I think this might be the last week off, so we're going to go do maybe an overnighter. I got my daughter's got a friend, so we're going to do something fun. I might be out of the office for tomorrow and the day after, but then back here afterwards, and then I'm going back to local studio to do in-person interviews. I've got a whole list of things that I'm going to do now, so stay tuned. Robert, stick around. We'll say our proper goodbyes. I'm going to end the stream, and Waltz, pick Waltz, Kamala.
No. Gotta be Shapiro. Gotta be Shapiro. I want all of those Pennsylvania cases on blast.
Well, you're more. It's 65% for Shapiro. I'm at that's not 25% for Waltz, but I got in early. So come on, fingers crossed. Got to make up for my bad Kamala bet. Everybody, go. See you all tomorrow, and you'll see Robert tomorrow. Peace out.